Some key details have come out at Rick Allen's trial already after 7 days have passed. On Friday, the 18th of October, 2024, in the opening statements, Rick Allen's defense attorney revealed the hair, which was in Abigail Williams' hand, was the hair of a possible female relative of Liberty German, which makes me believe the investigators had gotten the hair tested, which was the mitochondrial DNA, and through the maternal lineage, worked out the hair matched a female relative of Liberty, but they could not connect a specific female relative to the hair. Defense attorney Andrew Baldwin also claimed the hair had a root, and it's been reported, but I don't know how accurate the report is that the hair wasn't tested by investigators and is now being tested with newer DNA hair testing advancements to see if they can match the hair directly to a specific female relative of Liberty German. He also said in the opening statements that the forensic data on these phones don't lie, and said to the jurors that the prosecution's case is going to fall apart before your very eyes. He said Richard Allen was never on the trail at the same time with the girls, and that Allen left by 1:30 p.m. that day. Baldwin said Allen's car was gone by 2:15 p.m. and said that if his car is gone, Richard is gone. Defense attorney Andrew Baldwin said that witness Betsy Blair will testify that when she drove by the lot, she saw a car, but the vehicle she saw looked nothing like Allen's Ford Focus 2016. Betsy Blair, who helped create Young Guy Sketch, who looked seemingly younger than old Bridge Guy Sketch, with curly hair, hooded eyes, and a strong jawline. In the probable cause affidavit, it was claimed she saw a male wearing blue jeans and a blue jean jacket. She advised he was standing on the first platform of the Monon High Bridge, approximately 50 feet from her. She advised she turned around at the bridge and continued her walk. She advised approximately halfway between the bridge and the parking area across from Mears Farm, she passed two girls walking toward the Monon High Bridge. She advised she believed the girls were victim 1 and victim 2. Betsy advised she finished her walk and saw no other adults other than the male on the bridge. Her vehicle was seen on the Hoosier Harvestor video at 2:14 p.m. leaving westbound from the trails. Betsy advised when she was leaving she noted a vehicle was parked in an odd manner at the Child Protective Services building. She said it was not odd for vehicles to be parked there, but she noticed it was odd because of the manner it was parked, backed in near the building. In the first Frank's motion filed by Rick Allen's defense, it claimed that Betsy Blair saw an older-looking vehicle which resembled a 1965 Ford Comet, which she meant a Mercury Comet, and that she told Liggett that the car she saw was not black, which, in the defense Frank's motion, claimed Tony Liggett needed the vehicle to be black in order to fit the description of Richard's black Ford Focus 2016 as described in Liggett's affidavit. Betsy Blair, according to the defense, claimed that the vehicle she saw was not black, so she didn't claim what color the car she saw was, and said that she saw a Ford Comet and not a Mercury Comet, and she thought maybe it was an older vehicle like her father had. One of the main colors of the 1965 Mercury Comet was black or onyx. In the testimony of Lieutenant Jerry Holman given at the hearing on the motion in limine held on August 1, 2024, he answered a question about Ms. Carbaugh and Ms. Blair from Allen's defense attorney Andrew Baldwin, who claimed that they didn't want to do a sketch, but they were pressured by police to assist in the investigation, and Baldwin asked Holman if it was a true statement, and he said yes. Lieutenant Jerry Holman also said that the sketches were dependent on the people that saw those people that they sketched, and they were from witness testimony. Sarah Carbaugh, according to the first Frank's motion, Sarah did not see a man who was muddy and bloody, just muddy, according to defense attorney Andrew Baldwin. The man who Sarah saw was in a light tan colored jacket walking down road 300 north towards CPS parking lot at approximately 3:57 p.m. Betsy Blair's sighting was at 2 p.m. of a man wearing a blue jacket standing on the first platform of the Monon High Bridge approximately 50 feet from her. On the first day of trial, in the opening statements, Judge Gull ruled that the two composite sketches of the suspect released by Indiana State Police were not allowed to be admissible during trial. On Monday, the 14th of October, 2024, prosecutor Nick McClellan filed a motion for the two composite sketches. Old Bridge Guy sketch from July 2017, and Young Guy sketch from April 2019 to not be allowed to be used at trial because of the confusion it could cause. Sketches are generally considered hearsay evidence and aren't often used in trials as evidence. The Young Guy sketch was created on February 17, 2017, before Old Guy sketch was released and was revealed at the April 22, 2019 press conference, where initially police claimed it was of a different person. The investigators only briefly claimed it was a different person for less than a month. In May 2019, Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter claimed a sketch is not a photograph, and if combined both sketches together, that the killer might share similar facial features to both sketches. On the first day of trial, Becky Patty, Kelsey German, Derek German, Anna Williams, and Carroll County Sheriff's Office Deputy Mitch Catron all testified for the prosecution. They all retold what when they found out 14-year-old Liberty German and 13-year-old Abigail Williams had gone missing on Monday, February 13, 2017. Liberty German's sister testified about what the girls were wearing that day and how they were taking photos in the car. Liberty German's father, Derek German, took the stand and said he went to the trail to pick up his daughter and Abby Williams at around 3:30 p.m. on the 13th. He said the girls were not there, and he tried calling Libby's cell phone, and she did not answer, what he said was rare. He called again, and she did not answer, and he started getting worried. He started looking for the girls and eventually left to reach out to family to ask them to help look for the girls with him. The mother of Abby Williams, Anna Williams, testified for the prosecution and said that she was working on a local restaurant when she received a phone call about her daughter and she found out she had gone missing. She told her boss, "I don't know what these girls are up to, but I will be back." The final witness of the day was Carroll County Sheriff's Office Deputy Mitch Catron. He was asked about what occurred on the evening of February 13th after the girls had been reported missing. He said that he searched the trail for a brief period and that he also interviewed a man named Brad Weber who lived in a home near the trail. The jury asked him a couple of questions. They asked him, how often do people walk the trail and then turn around without crossing the Delphi High Bridge? He responded to the question and said that he doesn't know. On Saturday, October 19th, 2024, on day 2 of the trial, former Delphi police chief and current investigator for the Carroll County prosecutor, Steve Mullen, and Delphi residents Patrick Brown and Jake Johns testified for the prosecution. Former Delphi police chief Steve Mullen testified first and said February 13, 2017 was just a routine day when he heard radio traffic about 2 missing girls. He testified to gathering information quickly through family, friends, school resources, and calling in former Carroll County Sheriff Tobe Leesenby for assistance. Mullen testified that he still believed given time, they, the girls, would return home, and I couldn't imagine anyone had done any harm to them. Mullen spent time testifying to details about the Delphi trails and search locations. He said about 12:15 p.m. on February 14th is when Pat Brown, longtime Delphi resident, had located the bodies. Jurors witnessed Exhibits 8 and 9 from the state, including a 9-minute drone video captured the Delphi Trails area from 2024 and drawings of trail maps by Mullen. Mullen stated the area today is pretty consistent of what we would have seen back then. Jake Johns, a local Delphi resident, gave a testimony who was in the search party, said that he recalled another searcher saw footprints and disturbed rocks sliding down the hillside to the riverbank on the south side of Deer Creek. John said the water was slightly deep and not fast-moving. Still, he decided not to cross. He saw a piece of clothing floating in the creek. It was Libby German's tie-dye shirt, and called out to a nearby firefighter to investigate. Local resident Patrick Brown set out to search for the girls after hearing they were missing. When learning something had been found in the creek, he walked from County Road 300 north through the cemetery onto Ron Logan's property south toward the north side of Deer Creek. He came across the girls' bodies on February 14 and called out to the other searchers, "We found them." He told the court, "I thought they were mannequins." His voice cracked during the recollection. Brown then called the Delphi Police Department to report the discovery. Disturbed by what he found, he turned his back on the grisly scene. On Monday, the 21st of October, day 3 of the trial, Carroll County Sheriff's Deputy Darren Giancola went to the witness stand first for about 40 minutes. Giancola was the first law enforcement officer on the scene after the bodies were discovered. Giancola wasn't on duty, but joined the search efforts for Williams and German the night of February 13th. He noted that at the time he didn't think something bad happened to them. "They usually show back up," Giancola said. Sometime after resuming the search on February 14th, he was told that the search party found something by the creek and that it may be bodies. He arrived to that area and saw a multicolored shirt in the water and a shoe stuck in roots by the water. He couldn't see the bodies from where he was standing right away, but once he saw them, he worked to clear the scene as a detective cataloged the people nearby. Within minutes, state troopers and investigators showed up and started putting crime scene tape up. Giancola said one of the bodies was nude and the other was clothed. He said there was a substantial amount of blood under the bodies. He took a deep breath before saying there were deep cuts to the girls' throats. When asked if any life-saving measures were taken, Giancola said it was apparent that the girls were already deceased. Court took a recess at 11:30 a.m. when the state finished questioning Indiana State Police Sergeant Jason Page after the jury had seen crime scene photos for the first time. Judge Fran Gull saying they needed a break. Court resumed at 1 p.m. on Monday with the cross-examination of Sergeant, Page by defense attorney Bradley Rozzi. Through Rozzi's questioning, Sergeant Page said he's not aware of any DNA evidence that directly links Richard Allen to the girls' deaths. Rozzi also tried to call the official time of death into question by asking if investigators can tell time of death by markings from scavenger animals or insects. "There are many variables involved. That is not a yes or no question," Sergeant Page said. Later in his testimony, Sergeant Page asked to go back to clarify that while they have consulted entomologists in other cases in the past, when insects had been present at the crime scene, it was never used to aid in determining the time of death. Rozzi entered into evidence several photos of the crime scene that showed the ammunition cartridge found to the right of Libby's foot. Terminology was clarified that the bullet is the projectile that comes out of the casing, and when the round is unspent and both the bullet and casing are intact, it's called a cartridge. The cartridge was discovered when state police crime scene investigators were using an alternative light source to look for other bodily fluid evidence like saliva or semen. The ALS uses a blue-violet looking light to fluoresce such evidence. 2 of the CSIs were wearing goggles to see if anything illuminated. A third CSI noticed something flashing in the ground under the light, and that led them to finding the cartridge partially buried under leaves. The cartridge was facing down, with the business end, as Rosie called it, facing down into the ground. The primer and the writing around the head stamp were visible from how the cartridge was lying on the ground. Rosie called into question why Sergeant Page didn't take pictures of the cartridge once it had been picked up off the ground to show the bullet end. Rosie asked if the cartridges would have marks on them that are critical in determining where they came from, Rosie suggesting the investigators should have taken pictures of the full cartridge in their hand or on the ground before placing it into evidence. Sergeant Page testified that yes, the cartridges would have identifying marks on them, but we never photograph things in our hands. That's unprofessional. Any details you're talking about would come from a lab. We don't have camera lenses to get the detail you're talking about. The cartridge found at the scene was .40 caliber Smith & Wesson ammunition. Rozzi, saying the CSI's job is to document the crime scene, should have taken more photos of the entire cartridge because that would assist us to tell the same cartridge that might end up in this courtroom is the same one in the ground. Rozzi further pointed out that the bullet ends of ammunition can sometimes be different colors and made from different materials, which is why having a picture of the entire cartridge from the crime scene is so important. Dwayne Datzman, a retired Indiana State Police crime scene investigator who was one of the 3 CSIs to work the Delphi scene, testified after Sergeant Page that the cartridge in the photos was the only cartridge found at the scene. He is who noticed the casing glittering on the ground when the other investigators were shining their blue light on the scene. Defense attorney Andrew Baldwin, in the cross-examination questions, asked, "Would you agree video of the cartridge coming out of the ground would better show different angles?" Datzman testified that he disagreed with that, and it's better to photograph it at a lab in a safe environment. In the redirect, prosecuting attorney James Luttrell asked if Datzman's ever taken video of collecting evidence in his, at the time, his 16 years as a CSI, and Datzman said no. But when Baldwin pressed if he could do it over again, would he take a photo of the entire cartridge on the ground, and Datzman said, "If I had to do it, I'd imagine I'd had done that, then submit it to the lab." The jury asked Datzman two questions. Both were about the cartridge. The first question was, would there be any reason the bullet submitted to evidence is a different bullet? Datzman testified that no, it would be the same one sent to the lab from the scene. The second juror question was, is there a process to ensure the jury sees evidence that is not tampered with? Datzman explained that there is a chain of custody for evidence, and the investigator seals it and then signs it over to the clerk, who signs it into evidence, and it's kept in a secure area. The third ISP CSI at the scene, Brian O'Leahy, also testified about the cartridge found at the scene. He confirmed he's the person who put the bullet into an evidence envelope, and then he took it to the State Police Lafayette Post, and it was put into evidence storage. He also testified that not other cartridges were found anywhere at the scene near the bodies or in any other areas police searched. Officers testified that they used metal detectors on February 15th when they were canvassing the area. All the law enforcement officers who testified Monday said they either did not have a gun with them or their weapon was their department-issued 9mm handgun. Questioning of all three crime scene investigators also surrounded the sticks and tree limb found on top of the girls' bodies. Datzman testified that each stick was removed one by one and was examined for any blood or obvious evidence and then set aside so Noon would step on them. He added that they did not collect them to be taken to a lab as evidence because there was no evidence on them, and they were in a very rough, crumbly condition with moss growing on them in areas. "We've never gotten DNA off surfaces such as this. In my opinion, it was not of value as evidence," Datzman continued. Datzman did then return on March 3rd, 17 days later, to collect the sticks and bring them to the ISP large evidence facility at the Lafayette Post. He said he knew which sticks they were because he knew where they were placed, and he used crime scene photos to match the shapes. He testified that he was not clear on why he was asked to go back and collect the sticks. When defense attorney Baldwin asked Datzman if it was a mistake to not take the sticks, Datzman replied, "I don't think so." Baldwin pressed that the sticks had blood on them and should have been collected, commenting that someone had to have placed the sticks on the girls' bodies and they didn't fall on top of the bodies on their own. Datzman replied, "Not necessarily. If the blood was swabbed and documented, you can't take every stick and leave in the forest with a drop of blood on it." Defense questioning of Datzman asked him what the girls' body temperatures were. Datzman testified that he didn't know, that they don't test that. He explained that to get a core body temperature, it's typically tested rectally, and with the potential of sexual assault, they didn't want to disturb any potential evidence. Datzman further testified that they would not get time of death from the core body temperature, that there are too many variables. Baldwin suggested investigators should have taken the temperature of the bodies using a thermometer in their armpits, like his mom used to do. Luttrell objected to that phrasing, saying it's not relevant what Baldwin's mom used to do. Judge Gull upheld the objection. Datzman did say that's not how it's done, and Luttrell reiterated that you can't get core body temperature from under an armpit because that's not the definition of core. Later, in O'Leahy's testimony, he said the bodies were cold and rigor mortis had already set in. A lot of testimony from all the witnesses and questions from the defense team on Monday called into question how deep the creek is and if the clothes Abby was found in were wet. The investigators testified that Abby's clothes were wet or damp, and they did not think it could have been from condensation. Defense attorneys, however, brought up that there are not clear lines on the clothes showing a water line of where they may have been wet. Defense attorneys also pointed out that no measurements of creek depth were taken. It's thought that the girls exited the Monon High Bridge on the south side of the creek, but their bodies were found on the north side. No one testified a clear way the girls ended up on the other side of the creek. Olehi testified that Abby's jeans were bunched up at the waistband and were wet to the touch. "I can see the jeans are darker on the leg bottom and the waistband was still wet," he said. He also said that during the autopsy on February 15th, the clothes were still wet and moist and were taken to the Putnamville State Police Post in Greencastle because they have a facility that's designed to dry out evidence. Clothes found in the creek were taken to that same facility to be dried out. Brian Olehi testified that he worked for the Indiana State Police from 1995 to 2021 and was in the lab as a CSI from 2015 to 2021. He said he's worked around 275 to 350 crime scenes and around a third involved a death. Olehi was the lead crime scene investigator at the Delphi scene. When the Carroll County Sheriff's Department called him to come to the crime scene to assist, he called Sergeant Page to come to the scene, knowing 2 girls who had been missing were found dead. On his way, he got a second call that it appeared to be a homicide with foul play suspected. That's when Olehi then called Datsman to come assist as well. During Olehi's testimony, the state moved to enter another 60 photos of the crime scene and the autopsy into evidence. The defense objected to 15 of them, and the judge admitted them over objection, saying the state has to prove their intent with the pathologist's testimony. The photos that had objection were not shown to the jury on Monday. Most of the other photos were of clothes and items found in Deer Creek. The bodies were upstream and north of where the following items were found in the creek: pair of jeans, size 26 waist, that were inside out with pink colored underwear on the legs, 1 Nike black athletic shoe with white sole and white swoosh, the left shoe a white bandana type piece of fabric, pink footed sock black spaghetti strap shirt that was inside out, size large 10 to 12 tie-dye t-shirt, size extra large that was inside out, black footy sock, gray zip-up hooded sweatshirt of cotton-type material. Libby German's body was found nude. Abby Williams was found wearing what was believed to be Libby's clothes. Her jeans were unfastened and looked too big for her. She had on a black hooded sweatshirt with the words Delphi Swimming on the front and German on the back in yellow block letters. More photos also showed Abby wearing a gray sports bra and a pink t-shirt under the sweatshirt and black Converse All-Star shoes. More photos shown during Olehi's testimony revealed the right black and white Nike tennis shoe under Abby's body around the small of her back, and Libby's cell phone in a purple Harry Potter Gryffindor case under the shoe. Both the shoe and phone were hidden under Abby's clothes and body until investigators moved Abby's body, Olehi testified. Several photos also showed the girls' faces and bodies up close to show where blood was located. Libby's mother was visibly emotional with a family member putting her arm around her in comfort. One juror looked at the picture but then lowered his head, putting his hand over his forehead until the next photo. Another juror sat with his hand over his mouth during the most graphic images. It was pointed out there was blood on Libby's right foot heel and on the back of her right calf and leg. Olehi testified that the wounds to her neck were made by a sharp instrument. Photos again showed both of Libby's hands being bloody and a lot of blood on her face. Olehi described how they swab blood with a Q-tip-like stick, and then each location of a swab is put in its own envelope or paper bag and sealed to be taken to evidence. They don't use plastic bags because that could cause the blood evidence to degrade. He explained that when you take swabs, you sometimes take it from an area with less blood to have a better chance at finding cells or blood transferred from a suspect, referring to Libby's wrists over her hands. Olehi explained the more blood-dense areas would mute out a suspect's DNA with Libby's DNA from her own blood. Another photo showed blood on Libby's thigh. Some appeared to be droplets, and others were more streaks, which Olehi testified indicated blood trails and movement. When investigators rolled Libby onto her left side, There were a lot of leaves and mud marks along the back of her body. Olahi also said there was a lot of blood under her. Abby's body was found with her right leg bent under her left leg, with the right foot under the calf area of the left leg. Her arms were folded at the elbow with her hands up near her collarbones near her face. The arms were not crossed and her hands were hidden inside the sweatshirt sleeves. More photos showed Abby's hands after investigators had moved the sweatshirt sleeves down, and while there was dirt and debris on her hands and sweatshirt, there was no obvious blood. Olahi testified that the blood found on Abby was all around her neck area, on the back of her sweatshirt, and on the ground under that same area where her body was laying. Pictures of her feet with the shoes removed showed dirt on the bottom of her feet. Olahi testifying that it indicated she had her shoes off at some point. He also said mud silt found on the bottom of her shoe was consistent with the soil on the bottom of the river. Olahi also explained that a new, unused, clean white sheet the size of a twin bed sheet was used to wrap each body individually, and then the bodies were each put in new, unused, and clean body bags. The bags are then sealed, and he initialed each one. Olahi testified that the victims were then transported by the cargo van of the Carroll County Coroner's Office to Terre Haute for an autopsy the next day, February 15th. Olahi arrived to witness the autopsy at 7:30 a.m. because he said the autopsy is still considered a crime scene, and it's my job to document evidence found in the autopsy. Day 4, on Tuesday, October 22nd, started with additional testimony from Brian Olahi, the lead crime scene investigator on the case. Several key pieces of evidence were brought into court. Each piece was contained within a brown paper bag and was not physically shown to the jury. The evidence included Hollister blue jeans, tie-dye t-shirt, gray sweatshirt, medium size, Sonoma brand, pink underwear, black and purple sock, pink sock, green headscarf, black faded glory, spaghetti strap shirt, Converse tennis shoes, .40 caliber Smith & Wesson cartridge, collection of strand of material found between fingers on Abby's right hand, strand from Abby's left arm, Libby's phone, black Nike tennis shoe under Abby's body. The items were either collected from the creek or recovered from the crime scene. Other evidence included swabs taken from various parts of the girls' bodies, arms, wrists, etc. One swab was blood from a tree and taken approximately 4 feet above the ground, while others were of blood found on the ground near the girls and nearby trees. Investigators also swabbed Libby's phone. Sexual assault kits were completed and turned over to police. Evidence from the autopsy included a black hooded sweatshirt with the words Delphi Swimming and German on it, size extra large blue jeans with blood on them, gray cotton bra, pink sleeveless shirt, and black bra with red stains. Abby Williams was wearing the blue jeans and sweatshirt. Investigators said the clothing belonged to Libby German, meaning Abby was wearing her friend's clothes. Defense attorney Brad Rozzy Cross examined Olahi. He asked multiple times if the swabs contained DNA connecting Allen to the crime scene. Olahi said he was not aware of any connection between the DNA and Richard Allen. Fox 59/CBS4 reporter Max Lewis described Rozzy's approach as aggressive. Rozzy asked about the sticks, branches found on the girls' bodies and questioned Olahi about the bullet evidence and shoe impressions. He asked about the time of death, with Olahi telling him it was an imprecise science. Of the branches found on the bodies, Olahi said he believed someone placed them there to conceal the bodies. Rozzy also asked if Olahi believed the sticks were there to communicate, which Olahi answered in the negative. He also said he had not observed any man-made cut in one of the sticks. He said since Abby was wearing some of Libby's clothes, it was a logical assumption that Libby was disrobed. He said investigators were not able to determine where the events occurred and told Rozzy that investigators didn't test the sticks found with the girls. Olahi told Rozzy he wasn't aware of photos of the ground after the bullet was removed. Rozzy asked Olahi if he agreed that he did a poor job of documenting the bullet. That led to an objection from the state, one of many during Rozzy's tough cross-examination. When asked if he wished he'd taken more pictures, Olehi said no. During his redirect, Deputy Prosecutor James Luttrell asked how many items of ammunition were found and packaged at the scene. Olehi said there was only one, the unspent bullet at the center of the state's case. At one point, Rosie referred to the cartridge as a magic bullet, leading to another objection. Judge Fran Gull sustained it, calling the characterization improper. Rosie again questioned Olehi about whether he wished he had taken more photos. Olehi also told the court that there were no signs of defensive wounds on Libby. Jurors submitted a handful of questions asking about the method of collecting and sealing evidence. They also asked how the bullet was collected and stored, and whether the undergrowth under Abby's body appeared to be disrupted. Olehi stepped down at 10:48 a.m., leading to a break with testimony set to resume later. The second witness was Brian Bunner, who was the digital forensic analyst for ISP in 2017. Bunner talked about the information that was retrieved from Libby's iPhone on February 15, 2017. 14 photos Bunner took during the physical exam of the phone were passed around to the jury. Bunner explains that after he did the physical exam, he moved on to extracting the data left on the phone. He reported that the data report was several pages long and didn't read all of it just the prior day or two before February 13, 2017. A video found on Libby's phone was played in court. The video was of Libby talking and walking towards the end of the Monon High Bridge. Libby is heard saying in the video, "There's no path, so we have to go down here. See, the trail ends here." The video shows the bridge guy getting closer to the girls and Abby running fast off the bridge. Bunner also explained that every time the phone is turned off and on again, data is lost, and when they turned off the phone in 2019, the data was officially lost. Witness 3 was retired, ISP forensic examiner and audiovisual tech Jeremy Chapman. Chapman worked to enhance 3 videos from Libby's phone. One video shown to the jury was taken by Libby of Abby on the Monon High Bridge. Chapman worked to enhance audio said by the man on the bridge who was heard saying, "Down the hill." After jurors saw video pulled from Libby German's phone showing the infamous bridge guy, several witnesses took the stand who were out walking the trails and crossing the high bridge on the day the girls vanished. Witness 4 was Rayleigh Voorhees, who was a 16-year-old Delphi High School student back in 2017 when she was out walking near the Freedom Bridge. She described seeing an unsettling man near the bridge who glared at her. She did not recognize the man and said he wore a mask up to his nose. When shown a blown-up photograph of Bridge Guy, Voorhees said, "That was the man I saw on the trail." Voorhees described Bridge Guy as wearing black jeans, a black hoodie, black boots, and a black mask. Claimed the man had a bigger build and estimated him to be 20 to 30 years old. Voorhees admitted her memory may have been impacted by the photo of Bridge Guy released by police during the investigation into the murders. Witness 5 was Brianna Wilbur, who was one of Kelsey German Siebert's best friends. Wilbur said she was with Rayleigh on February 13, 2017. She also saw the guy on a trail and later in statements to police said that the guy from the picture shown was the guy she saw on the trail. Witness 6 was Betsy Blair. Blair said she had been out walking the trails on February 13, 2017, and also saw the alleged Bridge Guy. Blair also saw Abby and Libby during one of her many loops while walking the trails. After learning of the girls' disappearance, Blair spoke to police who wanted her to help them create a sketch of the man she spotted near the bridge. She said the man had brown, poofy hair and described him as looking younger. She didn't recall him having facial hair. Blair told the jury she was roughly 50 feet from Bridge Guy and claimed she thought, due to his posture, that he was looking for someone. Blair said in her testimony that she has never in 7 years thought it was someone different than Bridge Guy. Witness 7 was Steve Mullen, an investigator with the Carroll County Prosecutor's Office. Mullen looked into the Hoosier Harvest Store cameras for 3 vehicles in particular. Those vehicles belonged to Betsy Blair, Kelsey German Siebert, and Sarah Carbaugh. Mullen later said that he saw all 3 of those vehicles. Due to 2 witnesses bringing up the composite sketches, Allen's attorneys broached opening the door on bringing the sketches back into the trial. Judge Gull previously ruled that the sketches aren't admissible in court. On day 5 of the Delphi murders trial, there was testimonies from a forensic pathologist and another witness who reported seeing Bridge Guy. On Wednesday, October 23rd, the state called witness 19 Sarah Carbaugh to the stand. Sarah Carbaugh was on the stand for about an hour giving her testimony. Where she became quite worked up through cross-examination, Sarah Carbaugh said she was on the Monon High Bridge Trail on February 13, 2017, and walked her dog there almost every day. Sarah Carbaugh described herself as local as you can get and testified that about 4 p.m. or 3:56 p.m. on Monday, February 13, 2017, she saw a man covered in mud and blood walking alongside the county road 300 north by the cemetery, and he had his head down. I looked at him, but he did not make eye contact with me, Carbaugh said from the stand. I'm going to label him Bridge Guy because that's who I know him by, she added. Sarah Carbaugh said she was at home when she heard about an Amber Alert. Carbaugh said she recognized the man shown in a photo on a local news as the man she had seen on the road on February 13th. Carbaugh did not go to the authorities immediately and eventually went to speak to local police investigators 3 weeks after the murders occurred. She said she had been traumatized by the murders. My inaction was me overthinking and panicking. I was having a moment, she said. Carbaugh saw a police officer at a roadblock in Delphi asking for tips regarding the case. She called that a sign from God to report what she saw that day. During cross-examination, the defense questioned Carbaugh's account, claiming she changed her story during police interviews more than once. Rick Allen's defense attorney, Andrew Baldwin, questioned how certain she was about her description of the man she saw on Monday, February 13th, 2017 at around 4 p.m. He pointed that in the transcripts of her initial interviews she did with the police, she had mentioned mud 11 and 13 times and blood no times. Sarah responded and said she might have mumbled the word blood the first time. She said the second interview she had done, about an hour of the video recorded interview, was missing. Baldwin asked her, "We have to take your word for that?" Sarah responded and said, "That video is missing and that's not on me." She was talking about her June 2017 interview with the police. She said, "I understand you're doing your job. You're doing a good job. My description is always going to be the same. It's mud and blood." Defense attorney Baldwin claimed that in a later interview had Sarah mentioning blood, but no longer talking about mud. He also scrutinized her on parts of her description she gave about the man she said she had saw. He said she had initially described the man wearing a tan coat when the Bridge Guy was in a dark blue coat. He said transcripts show that Carbaugh told police the man had effeminate eyes. "Are you romanticizing this?" Carbaugh said. "I can't tell you how many freckles he had or if he had effeminate eyes or any of that." Semi-retired forensic pathologist Dr. Roland Kohr, who performed the autopsies on the bodies of Williams and German, was the next person to take the stand Wednesday morning. Dr. Roland Kohr had served as the county coroner in Terre Haute. He said he had done 77,000 to 78,000 autopsies in his career. Kohr was called as a witness for the prosecution. His testimony began with a 30-minute narration of what goes into doing an autopsy and what the examiner is trying to learn. The autopsy Dr. Kohr performed on Abigail Williams revealed she had a 5 to 6 centimeter long wound, approximately 2 inches long, on the left side of her neck. However, Dr. Kohr said it was not a deep cut, only an inch deep in the doctor's words. He stated there was some skin damage to the right side, which he believes suggests the cut was made from right to left. Dr. Kohr observed livor mortis on Abby's body, which he described as purplish areas where blood settles after a body has been in the same position for a prolonged time. He says they found livor mortis on her upper back and the back of Abby Williams' legs. She'd been laying on her back position for long periods of time after death, he said. Kohr said livor mortis sets in after a person has been dead for at least 8 hours. Dr. Kohr said there was something that looked like a smear on one of Abby Williams' arms. He says that may have come when she was given Libby's sweatshirt. Many of the people in the courtroom were visibly shaken as photos of the autopsies were shown on the large screen television. Family members of the victims cried, and observers say at least one juror had a difficult time looking at the screen for more than a few seconds, and they looked like they were going to be sick. Dr. Kaur also testified about the autopsy he did on Libby German. He said German had 4 wounds on her neck, and possibly a 5th. 2 of those wounds overlapped. Kaur observed there was an X-like pattern in the larger wound on German's neck. Dr. Kaur says it is likely there were 2 passes made that resulted in that wound. He was unsure of what he called the middle wound. He believed it could have been a second pass with the weapon, but wasn't certain. He also noted a few small abrasions below German's neck. He observed there were changes in the pattern of the cuts and said if a person was drawing away as they were being cut, it could cause some changes. There were 5 marks on the edge of the wound on the right side of Libby's neck. Those marks were 1 millimeter wide with a space between them. Dr. Kaur initially surmised a serrated knife was used to make the cuts, but says he thought about the cut marks in the past few months. He now believes a box cutter was used as the weapon. Kaur said he did not create a supplemental report because he felt it would be speculative but not definitive. Dr. Kaur was asked by an attorney what happens to a body with wounds like these. He responded, "Bleeding will not be under pressure. It would be slower. It would happen over several minutes. As blood volume drops significantly, the body will go into shock. Organs will lose function. The person will lose consciousness, but they would not be dead right away." The doctor estimated what he called a very ballpark timeline for expiration that was based on the position of the body. Still, sitting would take longer to lose enough blood, at least 5 to 10 minutes, maybe longer. Laying down would go faster than standing up. As for Libby German, Kaur said her blood loss was more rapid than Williams, and he estimated she would have gone into shock more quickly because of that. He also testified she had blood on her hands. He estimated German would have died in 5 to 10 minutes, but guessed it likely would have been closer to 5 minutes based on the severity of her injuries. Dr. Kaur also noted that German had swelling of her brain due to less oxygen. Neither girl had any signs of sexual trauma or defensive wounds. Dr. Kaur testified he did not see any crime scene photos until this year, which was after his reports had been issued. The doctor could not determine the exact type of weapon used or the length of the blade, but he said, anything from a pocket knife to a kitchen knife to Abby, there is no way to tell if it was right or left-handed. For Libby, the doctor suggested she was dragged from another location based on the debris found on her legs. He also said the serrated area of the wound could be from the handle of an instrument or weapon. During redirect, defense attorney Brad Rossi asked Kaur, "You can't say a box cutter was used?" Kaur responded, "Not definitively, no." During a redirect, an attorney for the state of Indiana asked, "What is the minimum number of knives that could cause all of these wounds?" Dr. Kaur responded, 1. Just because there are other marks, that doesn't mean it was a different instrument. When Kaur left the stand at 12:40 p.m., the jury was released for lunch. The last witness called to the stand Wednesday afternoon was Indiana State Police Sergeant Chris Cecil. He says he has examined digital evidence for hundreds of cases during a 20-year law enforcement career. Cecil volunteered to re-examine Libby's iPhone 6S. His first written report was in 2019. The phone had been examined several times in 2017 after it was found near the girls' bodies. Data revealed Abby and Libby each accessed social media accounts on the phone on February 13, 2017. Data from the Apple Health app said the last time the phone logged movement was at 2:39 p.m. on February 13, 2017. This is a timeline of Libby's phone interaction from that afternoon. 1. 38:49 p.m. Phone call to Daddy-O, 1:39:08 p.m. Phone was charging 1:39:24 p.m. Call to Daddy-O ends 1:39:30 p.m. Second interaction with messaging app, 1:39:45 p.m. Snapchat viewing 1:41:44 p.m. Libby posted picture to Snapchat 1:43:49 p.m. Posted picture of girls in car to Snapchat 2:05:20 p.m. Snapchat picture of bridge with no people on it 2:07:20 p.m. Last time phone was unlocked 2:13:57 p.m. Video recorded 43 seconds long 2:14:41 p.m. Libby tried to unlock phone with fingerprint 22:32:26 p.m. Phone likely died 2:33 p.m. Screen was off. 4:06 p.m. Gets SMS message from Becky Patty, Libby's grandmother, saying, "You need to call me now." In the early hours of Tuesday, February 14, 2017, at 4:30 a.m., 15 to 20 text messages come in at once. No activity was logged on the phone after 4:34 a.m. Cecil also discussed how he used Knowledge C database. The database collected data that showed the apps that have been used, what was done within the apps, any notifications that may be received, and more. Cecil moved on to talking about the updated report he did from May to August 2024. The digital records show Brian Bunner, a digital forensic expert with Indiana State Police, rebooted the phone on February 15, 2017, as part of the police investigation. Cecil testified that from 2019 to 2024, there continued to be new updates of software and programs on the phone, so they attempted to pull more data from it. The phone was reprocessed. Cecil said that when Bunner plugged the phone in to charge, it added some small amount of data, but it did not change any information. Cecil said from the state that when Bunner shut the phone down on February 15, 2017, it would have reset the power on-off log, which prompted the defense to ask, "We will never know exactly when the phone powered off." Cecil agreed. Cecil explained that every time the phone was turned off and on, data would be lost. He said he found 4 of the images videos that were taken on Snapchat, except one. Cecil explained that he made a premature conclusion in his first report, and the last phone activity was on February 13, 2017 at 10:32 p.m. From his second report, Cecil believes that the phone stayed on at 4:30 a.m. on February 14, 2017, when multiple messages were being received on phone. There is no activity after 4:34 a.m. on February 14th. After a short break, cross-examination of Cecil began. The defense asked if any information was found on the 23 devices that were taken from Richard Allen's home that links him to Libby and Abby or to their murders. Cecil said there was not, but said his phone from 2017 was not found in the house and was not analyzed. Cecil testified that he did, however, find an internet search history regarding Abby and Libby in news articles on one of Allen's devices. On redirect, prosecuting attorney McClellan pointed out that Allen's cell phone from 2017 was not among the 23 devices taken. Investigators say they have no idea where that device might be. When the attorneys were finished questioning Cecil, the jury asked 16 questions. Some of them focused on the reports generated from the data pulled from the phones. Another asked about a discrepancy between when SMS messages and iMessage were received on Libby German's phone. Cecil said he didn't know why that happened. He also said he had no knowledge of an AT&T outage on February 13th or February 14th. On day 6 of the trial, a volunteer clerk and a retired CPS worker named Kathy Schenk, who came across the tip, was the first to testify at 9 a.m. Kathy Schenk organized and evaluated approximately 14,000 tips received by law enforcement regarding the murders in Delphi. Schenk testified she started helping with the case in March 2017. The tips received by police filled 5 filing cabinets. In September 2020, she was asked to digitize that paperwork into a database. The digitization took 2 years. Schenk said investigators were moving buildings in 2022 when she found a box in a desk drawer that contained a lead sheet from February 16, 2017. It was labeled Richard Allen Whiteman. The tip indicated Allen had been on the trail on February 13, 2017. Shank testified the file had the word "cleared" written on it and said, "I don't know how that tip ended up in that box." Shank took the tip to Tony Liggett, the lead investigator on the case. The name of the file was changed from Richard Allen Whiteman to Richard Allen on September 21, 2022. Whiteman is the name of the street where Allen lived. The file revealed that Allen self-reported he was on the trail the last day family members saw the girls. Shank said that was the only tip provided. During cross-examination, defense attorney Andrew Baldwin asked Shank, "Did you ever see a tip about a guy walking down the road bloody like he slaughtered a pig?" Shank answered, "Not that I know of." On redirect, prosecuting attorney Stacy Diener asked Shank, "Would a roadblock tip be given to you?" Shank answered, "Didn't believe so." One jury member asked Shank how she determined the name on the original Allen file was incorrect. She responded that she put it together based on her knowledge of the town and by looking at the previous narrative. The second witness to testify Thursday was Department of Natural Resources Conservation Officer Daniel Doolin. At the time of the murders, Doolin was a lieutenant with the Indiana State Police and was involved with the command center. He followed up on leads received by police. He showed the court a lead sheet and explained to the jury what information goes on to the sheet. Name, contact, narrative, identifying number, who provided to, what officer should do, Doolin instructed. He said he picked up a lead sheet on February 18, 2017, and then called Richard Allen. He asked to meet at Allen's house, but said Allen preferred to meet in a grocery store parking lot. At that time, Doolin believed Allen's full name was Richard Allen Whiteman. Doolin testified Allen told him he was at the Monon High Bridge Trail on February 13, 2017 from 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. That was a change from the time he originally told police, 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. Allen told Doolin he parked in the Farm Bureau parking lot and that he saw 3 girls on the trails. He said he parked at the old DCS office and walked toward the Monon High Bridge. Doolin described his encounter with Allen as brief, about 5 to 10 minutes. He did not videotape or take an audio recording of the conversation. He did ask for Allen's cell phone information, including the 14-digit MEID, mobile equipment identifier number for the phone. During questioning, Carroll County Prosecutor Nick McClelland asked Doolin, "When you spoke to Richard Allen, he told you he ran into 3 girls. Did he give you any information on what way the 3 girls were going?" "Not that I know of," said Doolin. Doolin did not follow up on the lead and returned it to the investigation center. In September 2022, Doolin testified that he received a call from former Delphi Police Chief Steve Mullen asking if he had ever talked with Richard Allen. Doolin said the name didn't sound familiar to me, but I went back to the computer and typed in Richard Allen. Notes came up about an interview in February of 2017. Doolin began a search on Allen in the DNR point-of-sale system. That system keeps track of information gathered from hunting and fishing licenses issued by the state of Indiana. It displayed Allen's phone number as well as fishing licenses for Allen and his wife. The licenses include the height, weight, date of birth, and any changes made to the license holder's profile. Doolin learned a change had been made to Allen's height in April 2017. It had been 5 feet 4 inches, but was switched to 5 feet 6 inches on his fishing license. Allen's weight also dropped by 15 pounds. "I just thought it was uncommon," said Doolin. At that point, Doolin was asked to point to Allen in the courtroom. During cross-examination, defense attorney Rosie asked how Allen had contacted law enforcement. Doolin said, "I don't know how he contacted law enforcement. I just know he contacted law enforcement." Regarding the change in the fishing license information, the defense asked if Doolin knew who entered the new height and weight information into the system. Doolin responded, "No." Rosie said someone had to verify Allen's credit card information and claimed there were previous references to Allen's height as 5 feet 6 inches on his license. Doolin told the court he canvassed the crime scene numerous times throughout the investigation, including during the first week of the investigation. He was there on February 17, 2017. He testified he found sticks and branches that caught his attention. He said they had blood on them and were piled up in a 5-foot area. That was after the crime scene near the Monon High Bridge Trail had been released by authorities. Doolin testified to calling the investigation center and asking them to go back to the scene to collect the sticks. The defense asked if Doolin immediately noticed deer stands in the woods. He responded, yes. The defense questioned how uncommon it would be to find shell casings, both spent and unspent, in the woods. Doolin said, "It wouldn't be to find from a rifle, but not a handgun." The defense attorney continued, "Is it unusual to see hunters and fishermen have handguns when they go out?" Doolin said, "No, sir." "Have you ever heard of Smith & Wesson?" questioned the attorney. Doolin replied, "Yes." One juror asked if Doolin could remember what Allen's hair was like when he first interviewed Allen in 2017. He said he could not. Former Delphi Police Chief Steve Mullen took the stand to share more information from his October 2022 interview with Allen. He stated Allen believed he was driving his Ford Focus when he went to the High Bridge Trail in 2017. Allen still owned the car in 2022. Allen told investigators he may have gone through the country to get to the trail that day, and if he went through the country that day, he would have passed a business called Hoosier Harvest. Hoosier Harvest has surveillance cameras at that location. Mullen says Allen told him he may have driven to the trail by traveling on Route W 300 North. Allen told police he was wearing blue jeans, a blue or black Carhartt jacket, a skull cap, and military-style boots or tennis shoes. When asked if he saw anyone on the trail, he said he saw 3 women, 1 older woman and 2 younger women. Investigators asked Allen if they could see his phone. He originally agreed, but changed his mind, got agitated, and then walked out of the interview. Mullen said during the interview, Allen was asked if the bridge guy was him, and Allen responded, "If the picture was the one that was taken on the girl's camera, there's no way it could be me." Defense attorney Andrew Baldwin began the cross-examination of Mullen. He claimed nowhere in the transcript of Allen's interview did it say Allen may have driven west on 300 North. Baldwin asked Mullen to find that portion in the transcript. The court sat quietly waiting for Mullen to answer. After 7 minutes, Mullen said, "That was my interpretation." Mullen told the jury he found it strange that Allen mentioned the picture on the girl's phone. Jurors had 3 questions, including, "Did you investigate how many black Ford Focuses in Carroll County?" Mullen responded, "No." Another juror asked, "Did you look to see if Allen's other car, a 2006 Ford 500, was on the surveillance video at the Hoosier Harvest location?" Mullen responded, "Yes, wasn't there." State witness number 25 was Tony Liggett. He is the Carroll County Sheriff. He was questioned by prosecuting attorney Nicholas McClelland. In September of 2022, he reviewed the tip found by Kathy Shank regarding Allen. "It stuck out. I wasn't aware anyone had seen 3 girls on the trail that day. We believed it was Bridge Guy," said Liggett. The jury was shown a video of Bridge Guy for a 3rd time. This time, the video that was shown had been enhanced to stabilize the man and to listen to what was being said. "Guys, down the hill." Liggett interpreted the video by saying he believes you could hear the voices of both girls in the video. He thinks Abby said, "Don't leave me up here." And Libby said something about a gun before "down the hill" was said by a man. Family members of the victims cried as the video was played. Liggett learned Allen owned a 2016 Ford Focus and a 2006 Ford 500. He found that Allen worked at a CVS drugstore in Delphi. Liggett said he took pictures of Allen's car parked at that drugstore. He found it interesting the vehicle backed into a parking spot at the CVS, observing the car backed into the CPS building lot as well. Liggett shared Allen's timeline of events from February 13th, 2017. Allen told them he visited his mother that day, parked at the CPS lot, that he had been on the Monon High Bridge trails from 12 p.m. until 1:30 p.m. that day. He said he passed 3 girls on the bridge and said if he was going out of town, he would normally drive his Ford Focus because it was more reliable than his other car. Liggett believed Allen's comment about where he parked and his timeline was wishy-washy. Sheriff Liggett also testified to what was found in September 2022, when investigators executed a search warrant at Allen's house. Among the items found at the home were nearly 30 knives and at least 4 box cutters, a .40 caliber handgun, some ammunition, a single .40 caliber bullet in a keep-safe box in the master bedroom of the home, a blue Carhartt jacket. A gun registered to Allen was found in the nightstand of the bedside investigators believe was Allen's. During cross-examination, defense attorney Brad Rossi questioned Liggett if he was running for sheriff. Liggett responded, "Yes." He asked how much of a pay raise Liggett would receive if he won. Liggett responded, $50,000. Baldwin followed by asking if an arrest would increase his chances of being elected. Liggett responded, "This had nothing to do with me. It had to do with 2 little girls." Sheriff Liggett said he knew at some point that information regarding the crime scene had been leaked. The defense contends no one saw Allen on surveillance video walking where cars were parked. Liggett said he believed Allen acted alone in this case. The defense asked, out of the hundreds of thousands of pieces of evidence, digital evidence, does any tie to Richard Allen? Liggett said, no. 2 witnesses were called Thursday afternoon. David Vito, an ISP detective, assisted in the search of Allen's home on October 13, 2022. He witnessed photos being taken of the home, which also showed a Ford Focus outside. Vito told the court more than 12 phones, including outdated models, 2 pagers, and 2 SD cards were taken from the Allen home as evidence. The defense asked Vito if it was uncommon for a hunter or fisherman to have knives. Vito also said the jacket, car, and knives were examined and tested by authorities, but nothing came back to link those items to the crime scene. Vito testified that the pair of underwear and a sock missing from the crime scene were not found in Allen's house. There was a line of questioning while Vito was on the stand about the single bullet found in the keep-safe box in Allen's bedroom. The ISP detective testified that the bullet found in that box matches the single caliber Smith & Wesson bullet found at the crime scene between the bodies of Abby Williams and Libby German. ISP Lieutenant Jerry Holman testified regarding his supervision of the search. He sat in the car with Allen. Holman testified he asked Allen if he wanted to fill out forms for any of the items found during the search of his home. Holman says Allen responded, "It doesn't matter. It's over." Holman said he found it interesting. Allen responded, "It doesn't matter. It's over." When asked a different question later in the day, the defense also questioned how investigators handled the unspent bullet. They asked if photography could damage a bullet. Holman said, yes, depending on how it's handled. Day 7 of the Delphi murders trial began with the testimony of Melissa Oberg. She is a former firearms examiner for the Indiana State Police. However, by the end of the day, there were only 15 jurors. One of the 4 alternates was excused by Special Judge Fran Gull due to a family emergency. That leaves 12 jurors and 3 alternates. As for the testimony, Oberg took the stand as an expert for the prosecution. She said during her career she has examined more than 66,000 weapons. She was responsible for examining the single .40 caliber Smith & Wesson Winchester cartridge found at the crime scene near the Monon High Bridge Trail. The cartridge was on the ground between the bodies of Abby Williams and Libby German. The bodies were found in woods near the Delphi Bridge on February 14, 2017. The unspent bullet, or cartridge as some people call it, is significant evidence for the state's case against Richard Allen. The prosecution claims it ties Allen to the murder of the girls. Oberg testified for more than an hour during Friday's morning session. She discussed how a firearm works and explained the various parts of a cartridge. She explained to the jury that cartridge characteristics differ and why it is important. She demonstrated to the jury how a semi-automatic pistol cycles a cartridge, from the time the cartridge is in the magazine, moved into the chamber, and ultimately ejected, either automatically if the round has been fired or manually by someone racking the action. Oberg talked about her initial observation of the cartridge found at the crime scene. She said she could see 3 ejector marks on the head, 3 extractor marks under the rim, miscellaneous marks on the primer, and various particles in the rim around the primer. She showed a diagram of firearm parts. She said an ejector pushes the cartridge out of the magazine and an extractor pulls the cartridge out. The two internal tools work together. She showed 3 ways the cartridge could be ejected from the handgun. Oberg explained her exam process. Level 1 analysis involves checking the weapon's condition and what she calls class characteristics. She determines if the gun is broken or working properly. She also considers biometrics and whether any parts might be broken or missing. Level 2 analysis involves test firing the weapon with live ammunition and then using a comparison microscope to compare characteristics found on the cartridge/shell casing. It also includes comparing the shell casings fired from Allen's SIG pistol to the bullet found at the crime scene. Level 3 is the conclusion phase. The options are 1, identification, which means the markings match; 2, inconclusive, which means there is not enough evidence; or 3, exclusion, which means the markings are not the same and do not match. Oberg testified she used a 60 times magnification to observe markings on what the defense called the magic bullet. That is the cartridge found at the crime scene. She said unique characteristics of a specific gun surface could come from abuse, use, or corrosion. Those characteristics make unique impressions on cartridges fired by the weapon or cycled through it. Looking through the microscope is like watching a movie, Oberg said. Pictures themselves don't represent everything we see in the examination process. Oberg compared a fired round from Allen's gun to the magic bullet. She said there were 3 specific places where the markings match the cycled round found near the bodies. She said she saw 3 ejector marks on the head, 3 extractor marks under the rim of the shell casing, miscellaneous marks on the primer, and various particles in the rim around the primer. Oberg cited numerous studies in her findings. She admitted the research was not for the identical model or the extractor in Allen's pistol. Oberg said the data she collected from Allen's gun, combined with research cited on the manufacturing process, allows her to feel confident the .40 caliber Smith & Wesson cartridge found at the crime scene had been in Allen's gun. Defense attorney Brad Rossi objected to Oberg's testimony, arguing the examples cited were not for the exact model of Allen's gun. Judge Gull chose not to overrule them, saying she would let the jury decide how to weigh the studies. The gun tested from Allen's house was a Sig Sauer MP 226.40 Smith & Wesson. It included 1 Winchester .40 Smith & Wesson cartridge, 1 Blazer .40 Smith & Wesson cartridge, 2 magazines. Because Allen's gun was taken 5 years after the crime scene, ISP did a longevity test to see how the cartridges would hold up. Oberg said the longevity could depend on whether a person cleaned their gun with a brush that could break down parts of the gun. She examined Allen's gun and found no broken points. I was able to identify Allen's gun as having cycled the on-the-scene cartridge, Oberg said. But her statement came with heavy scrutiny from the defense, who questioned the science behind it. Her assessment, she said, was based on 4 rounds fired from Allen's gun and 6 more that were manually ejected. On cross-examination by the defense, she acknowledged the markings on cartridges manually ejected from Allen's gun were not prominent enough for her to conclude if the markings matched. The defense stated it is like comparing apples to oranges. Only 1 witness was heard on day 8 of the Delphi murders trial in Carroll County. The witness was Indiana State Police Lieutenant Jerry Holman. Holman is the lead investigator in the case. His testimony largely centered around his interrogation of Richard Allen before Allen was arrested and charged with the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German in 2022. Holman said before he interviewed Allen, he believed without a doubt the bullet found at the crime scene near the Delphi High Bridge belonged to Allen. However, during the interview, he says Allen denied any involvement in the murders despite being asked 20 to 25 times. Holman shared some of the interview tactics used by police interrogators. Build rapport, present evidence, lie, overreact to the person, read body language. Holman testified to the details of his interview with Richard Allen at the Lafayette, Indiana State Police Post 2 years ago on October 26, 2022. When that interview occurred, Allen had not been arrested or charged with any crime. He testified Allen was read his Miranda rights before he continued with the interview. According to Holman, this portion of the interview was not recorded due to technical difficulties. Police found a single Winchester .40 caliber Smith & Wesson cartridge at the crime scene between the bodies of Abby Williams and Libby German. Many of Holman's questions centered around that round and trying to determine how it got there. Holman said he believed without a doubt it was a round that had been cycled through Allen's gun. He testified he believed that based on the conclusion made by forensic examiners after they looked at and tested Allen's Sig Sauer model .226 pistol, Holman said he worked to build rapport with Allen by talking about their similar military background and guns. During the interview, Holman said Allen claimed no one had ever borrowed any of his clothes, car, or .40 caliber handgun. Allen never explained how a round found at the scene, one believed to have cycled through Allen's gun, could have gotten there. Allen told police he never carried his gun unless he was fishing or mushroom hunting. He also said he did not have it with him on February 13, 2017, when he was walking on the trails. Holman testified Allen said, "There is no way it's my bullet or that it came from my gun." When Allen was asked how he normally carried a gun, he responded he used a side holster. Allen told Holman he usually carried his pistol with one round in his chamber. Testimony revealed Allen continued to deny participating in the murders more than 20 times. Earlier in the trial, Holman testified Allen told him, "It's already over," as police were searching his home while executing a search warrant. Holman testified he asked Allen about that comment and why he said it. Allen replied, "The damage was done. You already interviewed my neighbors and coworkers. They all think I am guilty." Holman testified Allen said something to the effect that the arrest and murder charges, had ruined his life. During the questioning of Holman, the lead investigator testified police often will lie during interrogation interviews to elicit a reaction from a possible suspect. In his testimony, Holman shared that he had told Allen there had been witnesses who said they had seen Allen on the bridge. He also told Allen that an expert had determined that Allen was the man known as Bridge Guy in the video taken by Libby German on February 13, 2017. Allen continued to deny his involvement at that point in the interview. Holman admitted he lied to Allen when he talked about the death penalty and how it was still on the line. He said Allen replied, "I'm not going to tell you something I didn't do." Holman said throughout the session, Allen continued to deny any involvement in the murders of the girls or to even knowing them. Holman testified Allen denied his involvement 20 to 25 times. At one point, Holman said Allen stated, "I don't care what you do to me. I am not going to tell you I did something I didn't do." Allen got angry during the interview and, according to Holman, Allen started to cuss. Holman admitted he matched Allen's tone. The lead investigator said he asked a series of questions regarding Allen being on the trails on February 13, 2017, and what he was wearing that day. He said Allen responded, "I already told you I was out there. I already told you what I was wearing." Holman told Allen during the interview he believed Allen was a good man. He says Allen responded, "What kind of good person would kill 2 girls?" After the interview, Holman testified Allen said, "Take all your evidence and just arrest me." During cross-examination, defense attorney Andrew Baldwin questioned the interrogation methods used by Holman. He asked Holman why he told Allen, "Investigators want to lock you up and throw away the key." Baldwin also asked why Holman tried to make Allen confess by bringing up Allen's wife and daughter. Baldwin asked why Holman said, "You're going to drag your wife and daughter through this because you're too effing bullheaded to get out in front of it." Holman testified he was simply trying to elicit a response from Allen. Still, Allen denied any involvement. Holman testified to how he determines if someone is lying to him while being interviewed. He said he has the experience, which helps, but he also has learned how to pick up on suspects' cues. Those include body language, eye contact, or lack of it when they look away. Touching the face-hand movements, Holman testified, Allen showed no major signs of deception, and those that were there were very subtle. During cross-examination, the defense questioned the constitutionality of the interview. Defense attorney Andrew Baldwin asked why the beginning of Allen's interview, when Holman claimed he read Allen his Miranda rights, was not recorded. He said there were technical difficulties, and that portion of the interview wasn't captured. Holman said another investigator stopped the interview when they realized the session was not being recorded. They proceeded after they got it fixed. Baldwin then suggested that was just one of many missing videotaped recordings of the Richard Allen case. Baldwin, during cross-examination, started asking about law enforcement's theory there was only one person involved in the murders of Abby and Libby. Holman said he believes now that Richard Allen is the only person responsible for the murders. Baldwin pressed Holman on that statement. Holman continued, "I thought at one point in time there might be more than one person involved. But the longer the time went on, the less I thought that." Holman believes if more than one person had been involved, they would have talked by now. He said in his experience, people usually talk and rat each other out. Prosecutor Nicholas McClelland objected to the defense's efforts to lay a belief that more than one person was involved. On redirect, Prosecutor McClelland asked Holman if there was any evidence anyone else was at the end of the bridge in the bridge guy video. Holman said no. Holman also said he believes it's bridge guy's voice heard in the video taken by Libby on her iPhone on February 13, 2017. When defense attorney Baldwin had a chance, he asked Holman if there was speculation in the early stages of the investigation that two people could have been at the end of the bridge. Holman said yes, but there was no way to prove it. Baldwin also spent time asking Holman about the strand of hair found in Abby Williams's hand at the crime scene. Previous testimony from experts during the trial said it was a hair from a woman, possibly a relative of Libby. Baldwin asked why investigators never tested DNA from Libby's family after they discovered that. Holman said, "We decided not to test family hair because of resources at the time, and we had no family female suspect." During cross-examination, Baldwin asked Holman about the sticks found on Abby and Libby. Holman said he believes they were used to conceal, camouflage the bodies, or for an undoing. He also said he doesn't believe the bodies were positioned. Baldwin questioned Holman about mistakes made in the case. Under oath, Holman admitted there have been mistakes made. On day 9 of the Delphi murders trial, forensic scientist and DNA analyst Stacy Bozanovsky testified. She was responsible for testing the sexual assault kits collected from the bodies of Abby Williams and Libby German during their autopsies. Bozanovsky testified she also tested other items from the crime scene. Under oath, she said none of the items she tested contained the DNA of Richard Allen. The following items were tested: Abby Williams's rape kit, Libby German's rape kit, blood samples collected from the scene, swabs from the ground, swabs from the trees, clothing found at the scene. A .40 caliber Smith & Wesson cartridge discovered at the scene. Bozanovsky said most of the swabs from the crime scene contained blood from Abby or Libby or a mixture of both. The single strand of hair found in Abby's hand was determined to have come from Kelsey German, Libby German's older sister. Kelsey drove the girls to the trail on February 13, 2017, the last day they were seen by their families. Bozanovsky noted there was some male DNA found under the girls' fingernails and also from external genital swabs, but she added there was no sufficient DNA found. She stated the amounts detected were very, very little. She also said the presence of male DNA likely comes from living with a man or men, or perhaps from sharing their clothing. Bozanovsky showed the jury the cartridge found at the crime scene. She said it had plant material on it and a light brown dirt-like stain. She swabbed it in an effort to collect skin cells for DNA. She testified Monday morning it is very difficult to get DNA samples from unspent cartridges. Bozanovsky found there was an insufficient quantity of DNA for an analysis. She also told the prosecuting attorney who questioned her on the stand she did not see fingerprints on the cartridge. The clothing she tested included the following items: socks found in nearby Deer Creek underwear, found in the Creek Nike shoes. Bozanovsky says water from the creek made it difficult to remove any DNA and may have diluted any that was there. For DNA to be successful, we need to detect 25 to 50 cells, she said. Bozanovsky noted some items were heavily soiled with plant material or covered in mud. She also discussed the difference in the concentration of blood versus the concentration of touch samples. Trying to detect touch samples in an overwhelming amount of blood is nearly impossible, Bozanovsky said. Bozanovsky said investigators sent 72 rootless hair fibers to the FBI for testing. 3 of them came back with DNA that was inconsistent from that taken from Abby and Libby. Bozanovsky decided not to do additional testing due to the likelihood the hair fibers would be destroyed. State prosecutor James Luttrell asked, "Did you find DNA of Richard Allen on any tested item?" "No, I did not," Bozanovsky said. "Did you find any male profile on any of the items?" Luttrell asked. "No, I did not," Bozanovsky replied. Before the lunch break, Special Judge Fran Gull addressed the courtroom. She said she noticed quite a few people sleeping. The judge warned, "I don't conduct court in the bedroom. I would appreciate it if you didn't sleep in my courtroom." Bozanovsky was cross-examined by defense attorney Jennifer Auger. The defense questioned why DNA wasn't tested on the 3 rootless hairs that were termed inconsistent with DNA found from Abby and Libby. Again, Bozanovsky claimed she did not want to risk it. Auger remarked that with Allen now being on trial, the jury will never see these possible results. Regarding the single hair found in Abby's hand, the profile showed the DNA came from a female related to Libby. Libby's grandmother Becky Patty and her sister Kelsey German each provided DNA samples to investigators in the past couple of weeks. The hair in Abby's hand matched the DNA profile provided by her sister. Investigators determined that a hair found on the sheet inside Libby's body bag was determined to have come from another female. It is not known who that female is. The defense questioned Allen's blue Carhartt coat, Ford Focus, dirty black boots, knives, and items collected during the police raid at his home in October 2022. Bozanovsky was asked if she found any of those items to be connected to Abby or Libby. She responded that no DNA profile matched. On redirect, Luttrell asked if Bozanovsky believed she exhausted a lot, if not all resources available at the Indiana State Police Crime Lab for this case. Jurors had 8 questions for Bozanovsky. It was a very hard afternoon of testimony for the girls' families and members of the jury. One juror had a hard time looking at the photos. Some family members could be heard crying. Just before 3 p.m., the state called Patrick Cicero to the stand. He is a blood spatter expert from the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office in northern Indiana. Cicero has been a blood stain pattern expert for more than 20 years. He said he has analyzed several hundred cases and teaches at Indiana Law Enforcement Academy and universities. He explained to the jury how blood reacts based on the laws of physics. Cicero also explained the characteristics of blood stains, including the size of a stain can determine the force. The shape of a stain, i.e. round or elliptical, can show the direction the blood came from. The volume and direction of the blood provide the ability to best explain what happened at the crime scene. Cicero reset the crime scene for the jury as part of his explanation of his analysis. On February 12, 2024, Cicero reviewed the crime scene photos, autopsy reports, and DNA reports. Cicero said he visited the scene on April 4, 2024. On April 15, 2024, he examined the clothes worn by Abby when her body was found. Exhibits 286, 287, and 288 were shown in the courtroom, including a crime scene photo of a tree with a measuring device, another crime scene photo, and a photo of Abby. Cicero pointed to blood that was found on the tree about 4 feet up off the ground and to more blood found on the ground. He He referred to it as a bowl depression, if you will, where the body's found, said Cicero. Regarding the blood that was a stain on the tree, Exhibit 286, Cicero said, "When force is applied to blood, it becomes droplets." The blood was shaped like an upside-down letter L. The blood stain on the tree shown in Exhibit 287 was about 2 feet from the base of the tree. Cicero called it a transfer and said more blood had accumulated in the area. He used an aqueous leuco-crystal violet kit to identify the blood pattern, which he said was more squared, smooth, and uniform. Another picture shown to the jury included a closer image of a tree with chemical reactants. There was blood on the tree about 2 feet above the ground. At that point, one juror had to look away. Cicero referenced blood pools soaking into the ground as well as blood stains under Libby's leg and patterns of blood on her body. He said there was some type of water mixed with blood on Libby's face. He said it could have been a tear, suggesting she had been crying. Based on the blood patterns, Cicero testified Libby likely sitting when she received her neck injury and then leaned over her leg. Based on the 3 pools of blood that matched Libby's DNA, Cicero believes Libby likely was injured, then despite her injury ran to the spot where she died. He believes her body was dragged to the location beside Abby, where the girls' bodies were found. Cicero found Abby's injury on the left side of her neck. She only had blood in the area of her injury. He said her body was positioned as if she were a boxer, in a defensive position. Her elbows were bent and very close to her body. She did not have blood on her hands or sleeves at the crime scene. Most of the blood pooled at the base of her neck, with no blood stains on her shirt, torso, or hands. Because of that, Cicero believes Abby died where she was initially injured. He said it was very unusual there was no blood on Abby's hands. No evidence had been offered showing Abby would have died immediately, and Cicero said it likely took some time. Cicero said he had never seen a victim that had no blood on their hands after their veins and arteries had been injured. That led him to say Abby may have been unconscious, restrained, or bound. Cicero also testified he believes if Libby's body had not been moved, it would have been easier to see their bodies from the creek. Throughout the testimony, Richard Allen was taking notes and offered no visible reaction. On day 10 of the Delphi murders trial, video evidence of Richard Allen's interview with police was seen in court for the first time. It was also the first time the court heard the voice of Allen, the man who faces multiple counts of murder in the February 2017 deaths of Abby Williams and Libby German. On October 13, 2022, Allen met with the Indiana State Police at the ISP post in Lafayette. He was interviewed by former Delphi Police Chief Steve Mullen and Carroll County Sheriff Tony Liggett. "We just want to figure out what you saw when you were out there," said Liggett to Allen. "You told Dan Doolin with DNR in February 2017 that you parked at the old welfare office between 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. Doolin took Allen's first statement in 2017. They discussed how Allen was on the trail on February 13, 2017, the day the girls went missing. Portions of the interview with Mullen also showed Allen joking and laughing with investigators about being in the 50 Club. Allen recently turned 50 years old. He discussed family history and his health history. He said he had a heart attack and a few stints, as well as suffered from depression, anxiety, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. Allen said he had worked at CVS in Delphi since 2013. Before that, he had been a store manager at Walmart. On February 13, 2017, Allen told police he had visited his mother near Peru, Indiana. He believed he left around 11 a.m. to 11:15 a.m. and went home. He said it was warmer than usual, so he grabbed a jacket and went to the Monon High Bridge trails. Allen says he walked down to the bridge around noon and said he walked out a little way onto the bridge to see if he could see any fish in the water below the bridge. "I like fishing," he told police. Allen said he sat down for a few minutes and then left. He tried to remember where he had parked that day, but he could not say for certain. Regarding his first interview with authorities in 2017, Allen said he went to the Carroll County Sheriff's Office to provide the tip of seeing 3 girls on the trail. When an officer called to discuss the tip, Allen said he was headed to the grocery store. Allen paused and apologized, saying, "Forgive me. It's been years. I've thought about it a lot." He said he left the trails around 1:30 p.m. to 1:45 p.m. on February 13, 2017, but added that he forgot the timing really. Allen again told police he remembered seeing 3 girls at the trailhead and remembered seeing 2 vehicles at the farmer's entrance. He couldn't remember what the exact cars were, but he said it could have been an SUV or sedan. As the interview of Allen's interaction with police played in the courtroom, Allen nodded in agreement. On the videotape of the interview, Liggett asked Allen how he got to the bridge after he parked. Allen said he walked along the road. Allen said he remembered seeing cars parked at the Mears entrance, but he said he was focused on trading stocks during his walk. "I like to trade stocks, just trying to get rich," said Allen. Allen couldn't recall exactly what he was wearing that day, but said he was wearing blue jeans and likely a Carhartt jacket, tennis shoes, or military-style combat boots. He said in 2017 his jacket probably would have been black. "I have sweatshirts, hoodies, I have a little bit of everything," he said. Investigators then asked Richard Allen if they could examine his phone. Allen asked, "How long would you have my phone?" Mullen read Allen the phone rights, to which Allen responded, "I'm not going to be somebody's fall guy. I was trying to be helpful. It honestly amazes me we're even talking. I don't want to be somebody's fall guy. This doesn't feel like a conversation. It seems like you think I've done this." Liggett told Allen they were just crossing T's and dotting I's. The video played in court shows Allen preparing to give his phone to the police, but he pulls back and says he needs to talk to his wife first. "I don't want to be associated with this thing any more than everyone else does," said Allen. Allen said he didn't want police looking at the websites he had visited. The former Delphi police chief began pressing Allen by saying the phone would help. "We're here because you haven't found the guy who did this," said Allen. "I don't want to become that guy," said Allen. "I had nothing to do with it." Indiana State Police investigator Jerry Holman interviewed Allen on October 26, 2022. Portions of that interview were played for the jury. In the video, Holman started to build rapport with Allen. They discussed guns and Allen's military background. Holman asked if Allen had guns or knives when he walked the Monon High Bridge in February. Allen denied that he did. Holman then told Allen the ISP crime lab had results suggesting otherwise. Allen laughed and said, "No, they don't." In the video, Holman showed Allen pictures of the Winchester .40 Smith and Wesson cartridge found at the crime scene. He said, "You can look at the data here." Allen said he didn't need to read it. "This is ridiculous," he said. The video shows Allen denying any wrongdoing dozens of times. "I don't even know how that got out there. There is no way. I am telling you that's not true. It's not my round," he was heard to say. Holman told Allen the death penalty could be on the line. "I don't really care about living at this point. Kill me. I don't give a fawang," said Allen. "Go ahead. Kill me. You'll make my wife rich. I've been dealing with wanting to die for years." Holman told Allen he had been the last person to contact Abby and Libby. Allen again denied knowing them or ever interacting with them. The inside of Allen's mouth was swabbed for DNA by ISP investigators without any pushback from Allen. Holman continued to press Allen for a confession, telling Allen the ball was in his court. Allen responded, "You just took my DNA," and then seemed to laugh in disbelief. ISP told Allen experts point him as being the man referred to as Bridge Guy from the video captured on Libby German's iPhone. "They didn't see me near the girls or anyone else because it didn't happen," said Allen. "I don't care how stressed out I get. I'm not going to say I did something to something I didn't fucking do," Allen said. When asked about coming forward with information, Allen said he gave his statement to police the same day they asked for tips from the public in 2017. "There is no way possible a round from my gun ended up at a murder scene, so something is wrong," said Allen. "I'm not going to sit here all day and try to convince you I didn't do something. You guys are trying to trick me into saying something," Allen stressed. Holman left the interview room and came back with a photo of a bullet that had been found at Allen's home in a keep-safe box. It had been found when police executed a search warrant. In the video, Holman could be seen and heard giving Allen his theory. He told Allen, "I believe the girls said something to you. You told them down the hill, then racked your gun to scare them." "This is ridiculous. I'm not going to keep repeating myself," said Allen. Allen also denied knowing the property owner, Ron Logan. Logan owns the property where the bodies of the girls were found near Deer Creek. "You and I know that evidence doesn't lie," said Holman. "Clearly it does," responded Allen. During the recorded police interview, ISP told Allen his wife, Kathy, believed the evidence. Allen responded, "Oh my God, I didn't do anything. I didn't murder 2 girls. I didn't help anyone kill 2 girls. I didn't scheme. Whatever you said, I was in no way involved in murdering 2 little girls." His wife, Kathy, entered the interview room where they hugged and kissed. Kathy was crying. Allen tried to reassure her he was innocent. At one point, she asked him how the bullet from his gun got out there. Allen said he didn't know. As the video of their interaction played in court, Allen looked back at his wife and winked at her. "You know me," he could be heard saying. Allen continued to tell Kathy he didn't do it and not to worry about him. Holman's demeanor changed. He became heated and started to cuss at Allen. Allen became more reserved. He asked if his wife could leave, then kissed her. Holman told Kathy to tell her husband to do the right thing. That's when Allen got upset. "You're going to pay for what you've done in my life. If you want to fawa with me, you can fawa with me, but leave my wife out of this," said Allen. Holman screamed at Allen, "You killed those foxing girls. I know you did." Allen said he was done talking and told Holman to arrest him. He pushed his arms forward for Holman to arrest him. "Happy to. You're fucking guilty, and I'm going to prove it," said Holman. The prosecution and defense agreed to allow the judge to read the transcription of the rest of the video that was not played in court. That portion contained Richard Allen being arrested for the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. After a lunch break, the state called former Westville Correctional Facility warden John Gallipo to the stand to testify. Allen was transported to Westville Correctional Facility in the Westville Correctional Unit, WCU, under a safekeeping order issued in October 2022. The state's website describes WCU as a portion of the prison that holds 110 maximum security inmates assigned to long-term restricted housing, plus 110 inmates in disciplinary segregation. Defense attorney Brad Rozzi explained it as a prison within the prison. Gallipo discussed Allen's cell, a padded, isolated cell in the WCU. The WCU houses maximum security inmates and those being held away from the general population. He said there were cameras inside Allen's cell that were always pointed at him. Allen was given a suicide companion who was assigned to watch Allen's cell and check on him. Gallipo said Allen's demeanor changed while he was housed at WCU. The suicide companions would keep a log of any behaviors or words Allen spoke. Gallipo testified inmates used to be companions, but now detention deputies are responsible. During Allen's stay at WCU, Gallipo said he received a note from Allen stating he wanted to confess to the murders of Abby and Libby and to tell their families he was sorry. "I am ready to officially confess for killing Abby and Libby. I hope I get the opportunity to tell the families I'm sorry," the note wrote. A total of 8 detention deputies also testified to dozens of accounts where Allen allegedly confessed to the murders. Those confessions included the accounts where Allen said he killed Williams and German and that he wanted to apologize to the girls' families. None of these confessions were videotaped or recorded. All of them were written accounts of what Allen said to deputies assigned to monitor Allen's behavior and log what he told them. The cross-examination by the defense focused on Allen's mental capabilities during his time in prison. Many witnesses testified to self-destructive behavior, including banging his head on the wall, defecating in his hand, covering his body and face with his feces, and smearing it on his cell walls. They said he paced back and forth in his room and even drank his toilet bowl water. Defense attorney Brad Rozzi suggested multiple times Allen was eating his own feces. Ethan Drang has been with the Department of Corrections facility for 2.5 years. He testified he was assigned to sit in front of Allen's door and write suicide companion reports. He said Allen confessed and slipped an envelope under the door asking to speak to the warden. He said the note inside the envelope was him writing to the warden that he wanted to confess and tell the victims' families he was sorry. Drang also testified Allen said, "I think coming to prison cleared my depression and anxiety." Officer Michael Clemens was another suicide companion of Allen. He was tasked with documenting Allen's interactions every 15 minutes. He documented confessions from Allen such as, "I, Richard Matthew Allen, killed Abby and Libby all by myself. Nobody helped me." Clemens also wrote down a number of things Allen said in April 2022. "God, I am so glad nobody gave up on me after I killed Abby and Libby. I am ready to confess. I don't want to die. I am not crazy. I am only acting like I am crazy." During cross-examination, one of Allen's defense attorneys asked Clemens if Allen said how they were killed. Clemens said he didn't say anything specific. Next to the stand was Michael Roberts. He too was a detention deputy assigned as a suicide companion for Allen while at the Westville Correctional Facility. Roberts read aloud to the jury some of the things he heard Allen say while looking over him. "Dear Lord, forgive me for molesting Abby, Libby, and Chris. Dear Lord, forgive me for molesting Abby, Libby, Chris, and Kevin. I want to confess. I know a lot more. What more do I got to do? I killed Abby and Libby. My wife wasn't involved. I would like to confess. Can I talk? Can you listen? I killed Abby and Libby. How do I prove I'm sane? Why are you doing this? Do you know God? Why now? I killed Abby and Libby. I'll take some KFC. My grandpa molested me. Do I make you mad? Have I told you about my wife? I killed Abby and Libby. God, I am sorry for wasting your time. I swear I never cheated on a cigarette. I thought I was eating pizza." Roberts testified that Allen was hitting his head on the wall for a long period of time while in his cell. He even testified that Allen's face was swollen from this and bruised in some places. When testifying, Roberts shared that the other inmates who previously served as companions were spreading his words like wildfire. He believed Allen accepted his fate. Roberts shared that Allen was seen running in place in his cell for several seconds at a time and was even rolling on the ground. Detention Deputy James Early was next on the stand. He served as a suicide companion and testified to a number of things he wrote on his log sheet, recounting Allen's words and behaviors. Allen pacing back and forth. "I am ready to confess. I swear to God, I killed Abby and Libby. Fuck me running. I am ready to take the test. Fucking ready to confess." Allen drank his toilet water and hot sauce. He appeared to urinate on his mat. Allen talking at the door about himself and Kathy. He can be heard mumbling about being a sex addict. Allen is awake, mimicking Officer Early's movements. He is asking random questions. "Can I confess to the warden and Dr. Walla? I'm already dead." Early testified that Allen appeared to be quiet and non-confrontational when he first got to Westville. He described him as looking like a deer in the headlights. However, Early shared that his behavior got bizarre. Allen, he says, began drinking out of the toilet. He also testified to Allen harming himself with a spork and covered himself in feces. Early said he was not warned of any mental health issues with Richard Allen and thought he was perfectly normal. The defense team pressed Early asking about how he determines if someone is crazy. He said, "It's really a case-by-case basis." When asked if he would agree that those conditions at Westville could be detrimental to someone's mental health, he replied, "Yes." Early went on to say, "I think anyone under that prolonged environment, it could make them have some issues." Detention Deputy John Miller testified as to what he remembered Richard Allen saying while being a suicide companion. Miller read his suicide companion log with the following submission he wrote. Allen told him, "I killed Abby and Libby. The funniest joke is how I killed them. I got what I deserved for what I did. I hope I burn in hell for what I did. I'm sorry for what I did, for killing them." Miller said Allen was crying when he said that. "I'm sorry for killing those kids. I only killed them to give my family more time to live. Miller also testified that Allen appeared to be respectful and normal when he first got to Westville. He said around March, Allen began refusing meals. Miller said he was pacing his cell and mumbling a lot. Miller testified that he believed Allen was orchestrating his behavior and planning it out. Next to the stand was Brandon Fisher. He also was a detention deputy at the Westville Correctional Facility who acted as a suicide companion. Fisher shared a number of observations and quotes he says Allen said while inside the Westville Correctional Facility. Fisher said Allen requested to speak to the warden to confess that he is guilty, twice. I killed 2 girls in Delphi with a box cutter that I stole from CVS and threw it in the trash. I want to write a confession. I killed Abby and Libby. Allen continues to say he killed Abby and Libby and raped them. The girls were screaming when I killed them. Allen is pretending he is living in medieval times. Fisher said he also noted that Allen was banging his head against the wall and it created a small gash. He also testified that it was his belief Allen was putting on an act because they had spoken on several occasions, and he says he never had any major issues with Allen. Fisher believed Allen was being truthful when he confessed. During cross-examination, Fisher did, however, admit that he can't tell if someone is mentally ill by looking at their eyes. He also agreed with the defense when asked if someone like Richard Allen was being locked up for days, weeks, months on end, would that be detrimental to his mental health? The next detention deputy to the stand was Raymond Smith. He was the final suicide companion to testify as to what he heard Richard Allen say while being observed. Allen repeated Kathy several times and was running into his door. Kathy, I did it. I'm guilty. Run, Kathy, run. If I fucked those girls, I fucked those girls. If I killed those girls, I killed them. My name is Richard Matthew Allen of the National Guard. Allen then began singing, God Bless America. Allen stuffed papers into his toilet. I killed those girls, so I have to kill myself. Smith did admit that he wasn't sure of Allen's mental state while was at WCU. The deputy shared that Allen was polite and slept a lot more than others when he first started to monitor him. Smith testified that other offenders in the WCU tried to agitate Allen. He agreed that they would tell him to kill himself and call him a baby killer. The final witness on the stand for Day 10 was Detention Deputy Jason Bedwell. He testified to being responsible for performing rounds on the floor and documenting what Allen is doing every 15 minutes. Bedwell shared that on one occasion when he was standing at Allen's cell, he said, I am sorry for what I did. I am sorry for killing those girls. He added that Allen was awake but crying and lying down when he said it. None of the deputies or the warden said they believed the things Allen was saying, including the 60-plus times he is reported to have confessed to the murders. They also said they thought he was sane. Day 11 of the Delphi murders trial began with the prosecution calling Dr. Monica Walla. She was the lead psychologist at Westville Correctional Facility and cared for Richard Allen while he was in jail. Allen faces multiple counts of murder from the February 2017 deaths of Abby Williams and Libby German. Walla said, during her visits with Allen, she took notes on a pad and then transferred those notes into an electronic database. Walla began seeing Allen as a patient in November 2022. She said since Allen was on suicide watch, she visited him daily. Allen remained on suicide watch until December 2022. He was placed back on suicide watch in April 2023. Walla testified she didn't believe Allen was at the level of imminent harm until things took a turn in April 2023. She said she advised Allen not to talk about the case, but at some point began receiving confessions from Allen regarding the killings of Williams and German. Walla would visit Allen at his cell door in a cubicle at the jail. She shared some of the notes she took regarding Allen's confessions with her. She wrote that Allen said, I committed these murders on my own. I made sure they were dead so they didn't suffer. She also said Allen indicated that his intentions toward the girls were sexual, that he believed the girls were 18 or 19 years old, but that they could have been as young as 11. She wrote that Alan confessed that he was selfish, a coward, and took their Abby and Libby's lives to save his own. Wanted to apologize to the victims' families, wanted to go back and change his actions. Thought a problem began when he was a child, experimented by molesting his sister, became an alcoholic, and had help from his wife, Kathy. Talked about belief in God and hoped others found God before they die. Wanted to give a Bible to Abby's and Libby's families or someone he thought needed help. Was glad he didn't kill himself so he could see his family. Wallace said Alan's religion often was a focus of their meetings. She observed that Alan slept with a Bible, asked for a chaplain, read his Bible, talked about God, and expressed concern for Wallace's faith. Wallah's observation on Alan's mental status varied. She said Alan's emotions were up and down. She said sometimes he would go off on a tangent, but she did not believe he was having hallucinations. She said Alan entered Westville Correctional Facility with depression and anxiety, but felt that had improved. Throughout Wallah's testimony of these conditions, jurors were taking notes. Wallah testified about her reports of visits with Alan's from multiple days. Monica Wallah revealed what Alan's behavior was like on different days in May. On May 2, 2023, she said Alan often was repeating himself. He made statements about the murders saying, "I killed Abby and Libby. I will kill anyone. I will wipe out everybody." He also talked about World War III. Wallah said Alan said was going to kill himself by jumping off the sink in his cell. He made comments like, "I killed myself by killing my entire family and best friend." Yet later he told the doctor, "I won't kill myself, I'm too much of a coward." Wallah discussed Alan's behavior with her patient. She told the jury that Alan said he knew it didn't make sense to eat his own feces. Wallah said Alan didn't present as being psychotic. However, he was inconsistent in her estimation, and she believed he was sane. She also monitored Alan for situational psychosis. She said it would last about a month, and then he would return to normal. She gave Alan games to occupy his mind and upgraded him to a constant suicide watch. Wallah mentioned how Alan broke his tablet and was given a new one more quickly than other inmates. Usually if inmates break a tablet, it can take months to get another one due to the high demand. She said Alan was also given a TV by the warden. On Wallah's visit the next day, on May 3rd, she began an examination for situational psychosis. She said it takes time to diagnose. She noted Alan had disorganized speech and disorganized behavior. She also noted more of what she called confessions from Alan. According to Wallah's testimony that day, Alan confessed he saw the girls on the trails, followed them across the bridge, and mentioned doing something with his gun, which she said is how the cartridge could have gotten there. Wallah claims Alan then said he ordered the girls down the hill across the creek, wanted to sexually assault them but didn't, cut their necks, made sure they were dead, covered bodies with branches, stayed off the trails to leave and not be seen, then continued to live his life normally ever since. Wallah believed Alan appeared to be normal during the time of confession and showed signs of being relieved after his statement. On May 5th, Wallah said she evaluated Alan for suicide risk every 6 months. Her goal was to keep Alan safe. She then revised his suicide watch from constant to close. On May 9th, Alan allegedly told Wallah he wanted to just sign my confession. Wallah advised he needed to speak with his attorneys. Alan then said he wanted to snap his neck and kill himself. Wallah testified that Alan spoke with his wife Kathy on the phone during a visit on May 10th. He wanted Wallah present so his wife could understand his confession. Wallah said when Alan told Kathy, "I killed Abby and Libby," she hung up. "She doesn't believe me," Alan said at the time. "I didn't do everything I said, but I did kill Abby and Libby." Wallah noted that during this conversation, Alan showed no signs of psychosis and seemed to be calm. Wallah said that on May 11th, Alan wanted closure for himself and wanted to apologize to the girls' families. On the 2nd of September 2023, Rick Allen told Wallah he wanted to go to heaven, that he was afraid of dying, but felt like he was dying. She noted Alan told her he didn't know if he was going to heaven, was scared he wouldn't get to say goodbye, and felt he was a burden to his family. Cross-examination of Dr. Monica Wallah was conducted by defense attorney Brad Rossi. Wallah told the court she is no longer at the Department of Corrections. She admitted that she was familiar with the Richard Allen case. She said she followed the discussions on Facebook, on podcasts, and online. She told Rosie her interest grew as time went on. Rosie asked if she accessed a Department of Corrections computer in an effort to gain information regarding the case, information the public could not access. Wallah admitted, "I did that." Rosie questioned why she was no longer employed by the Department of Corrections. Her answer was only that they, DOC, had to do an investigation. She also shared information with the public about how they could access information on the case. The defense contended she shared that information on places like True Crime, a Twitter account called Defense Diaries, Criminality, Prosecution, Gray Hughes, as well as chat rooms and on Facebook. When Rosie asked if that was against the American Psychological Association guidelines, Wallah replied, "It is a gray area." Rosie pointed out Wallah commuted an hour and a half each day to follow the case. Rosie brought up a deposition when Wallah was asked if she had disclosed to her employer about how closely she was following the case. She said discussed it with her supervisor as he was coming into the facility, the jail, one day. Rosie pointed out statement taken from Wallah on June 6, 2024. Rosie said, "Did I ask if you reported it to a supervisor?" She said, "It was a no. I didn't do anything formal. I took your question as a formal report." During cross-examination, Wallah admitted she told Richard Allen what she was seeing online about him and about his case. Wallah also said Allen was a code D on the mental health scale. The scale spans from A to F. A is the least severe, E is the most severe, and the letter F is reserved for those suffering from substance abuse. Wallah testified that she advised Allen on April 7, 2023, that it wasn't in his best interest to confess. She believed Allen was claiming memory loss and was faking behaviors. Wallah visited Allen on April 10, 2023, outside of his cell. She said he raised his arms up and down through the visit, would not answer her, refused meals, urinated outside of his toilet, did unknown things to his private area, had papers scattered around his cell, and was naked. Wallah noted a shift in Allen's behavior after he received his legal documentation and discovery. She said it appeared that Allen received his discovery around the time he started confessing to the murders. The warden didn't want other inmates to see Allen's documentation, so he changed his companion officers. During a visit on April 12, 2023, Allen was seen clapping and banging his head on the door. She said he was constantly naked, rolling on the ground, touching his genitals, and refused recreation. On April 13, 2023, Allen begyndte at spise og ligge i sin egen fækalie. She noted his escalating behavior but said it didn't qualify for emergent involuntary medication. Wallah felt he was possibly having an emotional breakdown after seeing the discovery. Allen was barely sleeping since he was called to suicide watch. She called in a psychiatrist. On April 14, 2023, following Allen eating his feces, he was forced medication. On April 17, 2023, Allen's window appeared to be greasy and dirty. He was acting bizarre while praying in his cell but was wearing a kimono. During that visit, he again closed his eyes and said he wanted to tell the truth. He also expressed wanting a medical diagnosis to explain what he did. Wallah testified Allen started rational thoughts before drifting off. Wallah testified that on April 21, 2023, she did not believe Allen's bizarre behavior that day was genuine. On April 25, 2023, Allen reported having a mental divide. Wallah felt this was either from Allen not taking his medication to see his wife or to be transferred. On April 28, 2023, Allen was observed lying in bed naked. Wallah noted a smell coming from his cell. Allen requested to shower before his visit. During this visit, Richard Allen flushed his Bible down the toilet and called himself selfish. Wallah believed his behavior was not psychotic. Instead, she noted it as defiant with no real motive. He also believed Allen was severely depressed. Brad Rozzi, one of Allen's defense attorneys, cross-examined Wallah. Rozzi clarified the following. Wallah is no longer allowed back at the dock following her July 31st testimony. Walla violated the doxy's policy by accessing information about the Richard Allen case. Walla admitted to using her personal computer to log into a system to access documents related to Allen that were not made public. Walla followed the case before she started treating Allen. Walla was included in Facebook groups and podcasts related to Allen's case. Walla's interest in the case grew. As it continued, Rosie asked, "You never disclosed to your employer that you had personal interest?" "I think I did." Deposition said no. Walla said, "If you had the chance to do it all over again, would you have stopped following the case while treating Allen?" asked Rosie. "Probably," Walla said. One juror appeared shocked during the cross-examination. Rosie pointed out Walla told Allen things she learned online about the case, and no clinical testing was done on Allen. Officials say it is hard for the DOC to do formal psychological testing on inmates due to resources. Walla testified her analysis of Allen included major depression disorder, anxiety disorder, signs of dependent personality syndrome. His mental status was that of a fragile man. Allen's housing remained the same for his entire 13-month stay at Westville Correctional Facility. Allen's mental health score was a D on a scale of AF. The defense disclosed Allen didn't receive orientation training when he was processed into the jail, even though every other inmate gets it. Former Delphi Police Chief Steve Mullen briefly returned to the stand for the prosecution Wednesday afternoon. He said they wanted to answer some questions asked by the jury about previous testimony regarding Richard Allen's Ford Focus. Mullen was questioned by prosecutor Nicholas McClelland. He wanted to know how many Ford Focus cars like Richard Allen's were registered in Carroll County and the surrounding counties. Mullen said they searched for 2016 black Ford Focus sedans registered in the area in 2016 and 2017. Mullen said the total was 18, but only 8 of them were the same SE model driven by Allen. When you narrowed the search to Carroll County, Richard Allen owned the only 2016 black Ford Focus SE sedan. On cross-examination, the defense attorney asked if it is possible that another car, not registered in the county or the region, could have visited the Monon High Trail that day. Mullen said yes. The attorney also asked if Mullen could see the license plate of the Ford Focus in surveillance video. Mullen said no. When asked if Mullen could see the markings that proved the model of the car, he said no. The state called Brad Weber as its final witness of the day. He lives near the Monon High Bridge Trail on the south end, and a portion of his driveway passes under the bridge. Weber said he worked first shift at Subaru near Lafayette, who typically works 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. He said on February 13, 2017, the day Liberty German and Abigail Williams were murdered, he was at work from 5:41 a.m. to 2 p.m., 2:02 p.m., and his drive home was approximately 20 to 25 minutes. Weber told the jury he drove a white van, a Ford Econoline, to work on February 13, 2017. Weber confirmed on the day of the murders at 2:30 in the afternoon, he drove up the county road that is his driveway. According to the prosecution, it was Weber's van that startled Richard Allen. That was the interruption at around 2:30 p.m. There were some fireworks on the cross-examination of Weber. Andrew Baldwin questioned Weber. He said, "In 2017, you told police you went and worked on ATM machines." Weber responded, "That's not correct." Baldwin continued, "You didn't drive straight home." Weber said, "I dropped off a trailer." Baldwin replied, "That was earlier in the day." Weber shouted his answer at Baldwin, "That's not correct, no." And Weber and Baldwin started screaming at each other in open court. At that point, Baldwin approached the witness stand and served a subpoena to force Weber to testify when the defense calls witnesses later in the trial. Special Judge Fran Gull ended the session. On Thursday, October 31, 2024, day 12 of the Delphi murders trial, the prosecution played 8 recorded telephone conversations involving Allen. The conversations range from November 2022 to June 2023, when Allen was being held at the West Hill Correctional Facility. The prosecuting attorney outlined that Allen was making incriminating statements during those calls. Jurors heard Allen tell his wife Kathy that he killed Williams and German. Kathy would tell him, "No, you didn't. You're not well. You didn't do those things." In other telephone conversations, Allen was also heard saying he thought he did it, committed the murders of the girls, but he also felt like he was losing his mind. He also expressed thoughts of killing himself. Several of the phone calls were to Allen's mother, Janice. He didn't talk specifically about the murders, but he did talk about he feels the system was killing him and told them he was losing his mind. He stressed to them that he would never do what he was accused of doing and that he felt mentally tortured. Jurors also heard from state witness Brian Harshman. He is the master trooper in charge of analyzing more than 700 recorded phone calls where Allen was on the phone. Harshman also monitored his tablet, in-cell video, and Allen's review behavior reports. Thursday morning on the stand, Harshman testified that in his estimation, the voice of the man known as Bridge Guy is the voice of Richard Allen. A prosecuting attorney asked Harshman if he could identify Allen's voice because he had so much experience monitoring all of Allen's calls. Harshman replied, "Yes." The video of the girls walking on the Mountain High Bridge was played in court again. The court heard the words, "down the hill." Harshman was asked by the prosecutor whose voice he thought he heard. Harshman simply stated, "Richard Allen." Phone call of November 14th, 2022, Richard Allen to his wife Kathy. The phone call begins with Allen telling his wife Kathy that he's sorry, but he just needs her to tell the investigators that he will tell them whatever they want. "Whatever they want me to say, I'll tell them," commented Allen on the recorded call. As the audio played in court, Kathy Allen could be seen crying in the courtroom. Allen's voice continued, "I don't want you to worry about me. All I do is worry about you," said Allen. He then referenced wanting to kill himself. Richard Allen could be heard crying during the call. His wife Kathy attempted to console him by saying, "You're okay, you're okay," she said. They then tell each other how much they love each other. "I wish I could see you one more time. I'll see you in the next life. I swear I will. You take care of the family for me," Richard Allen told Kathy. Phone call of April 2nd, 2023, Richard Allen to his mother Janice. Allen told his mother he couldn't get in touch with Kathy because the phone system went down. His mother said it was very good to hear from him. They talked about storms that passed through Delphi, and they also talked about religion. Allen asked his mother how long she had been going to church, and he wanted to know church she was attending. He cried as she talked and expressed his happiness to hear her answers. Richard Allen told his mother on that call that he found God and turned his life to Christ on March 21st, 2023. He told his mother that he hasn't slept much, but would eventually. He really wanted to reach his wife. He ended the call with, "Love you too, Mom. Bye." Phone call of April 3rd, 2023, Richard Allen to his wife Kathy. Investigators claim Allen made incriminating statements during this telephone call. The phone call starts with Richard Allen saying, "Hey, are you there?" "Yes, babe," said Kathy. "I did it," said Allen. "What?" questioned Kathy. "No, I did it. I killed Abby and Libby," said Allen. "No, you didn't," replied Kathy. "Yes, I did," said Allen. "No, you didn't. You're not feeling well," pushed Kathy. "Why did you say that?" "Because maybe I think I did," said Allen. "No, you didn't. They are messing with your mind," replied Kathy. "Don't you ever say you did it?" "I think I did," said Allen. "No, why would you say that?" she questioned again. "I think I did. I'll say I did." "I don't know," said Allen. Kathy's response was, "Exactly. You don't know. There is something wrong. They're trying to get you to say you did." "I want to apologize to the families," Richard Allen continued. "Just don't talk anymore, okay, Kathy?" "I'm sorry," said Allen. "Don't talk anymore. I'm hanging up," said Kathy. The call ended. There were other conversations where Richard Allen expressed he was losing his mind. He said he wanted to kill himself and that he wanted Kathy to understand that he did it, referring to killing Abby and Libby. Kathy repeatedly told her husband he wasn't well. "I think I lost my mind." "You should know I did it, babe," Allen replied. Allen added that he did not understand what was going on. Kathy replied, "Neither do I." There were several breaks during the afternoon session. One was to allow Special Judge Fran Gull to watch a 30-minute video in her chambers. The state hoped to enter the video as evidence, but the defense argued it was unaware of it and said it was irrelevant to the case. After watching the video, which reportedly showed Allen acting out in the Cass County Jail and becoming irate towards the guards, Judge Gull sided with the defense and did not allow it to be played. The prosecution rested after Judge Gull ruled on the video, and the defense team for Richard Allen promptly called its first witness to the stand. The first defense witness was Cheyenne Mill. Mill and her best friend went hiking on the Monon High Trail on February 13, 2017, the day that Abby Williams and Libby German were reported as missing. Cheyenne Mill recalled she and her friend passed an overweight man on the Monon High Bridge. He didn't greet them. A few minutes after 3:49 p.m. on February 13, 2017, Cheyenne and her friend took photos and sent them through Snapchat. 2 weeks after going to the Monon High Bridge Trail, Cheyenne Mill talked to the police in the parking lot of Indiana Beach Amusement Park. She reached out to the police on February 14, 2017, after she had learned the girls' bodies had been found, but did not talk with them until February 28, 2017. She told police she saw a lady and a man who were frantic and had a moped bike and were suspicious. Mill also shared her photos. 6 months later, Mill said the FBI contacted her and asked for her mother's phone. Mill was told that her phone did ping from the bridge on February 13, 2017. Mill also said that the photos she posted were circulated, noting that she was blasted out by people on the internet. This case has been blown completely out of proportion online, she testified. She eventually wrote a letter to police about everything. The letter was then introduced as evidence, and Cheyenne testified the police showed up at her house after she had sent the letter. They asked her a question about her friend who was with her at the trail that day. The prosecution asked Cheyenne about what she had told the police on February 28, 2017. She said she told police that she passed a man with what she thought was a camera around his neck. She also clarified details about where she was on the bridge and when. The jury asked Cheyenne Mill 2 questions. They asked her if she saw or heard any vehicles on the road under the bridge, and Cheyenne said that the former railroad bridge goes over water. They asked her if it took her 6 minutes to walk across the bridge. Cheyenne responded and said it took her about 10 minutes. The second defense witness was Teresa Liebert. She was shown a map of the area, and she pointed out the private road owned by her neighbor, Brad Weber. She also pointed to the location of her home. Liebert said she saw someone who appeared to be strange standing near the mailboxes, but she could not see his face or what he was wearing. Upon cross-examination, the prosecution asked, "So you are telling us around 8:30 a.m. on this day, you and your husband were coming home and saw a man you had never seen before, but you didn't see his face or a photo of him?" Liebert replied, "Yes." The prosecutor responded, "Thank you for coming in today." No further questions. The jury had one question for Liebert. A juror clarified that there was no school on February 13, 2017, then wanted to know if the person by the mailboxes could have been a student. She said no. The prosecution rested on day 12 of the trial. So far in the trial, Judge Gull squashed a subpoena by Allen's defense for former Carroll County prosecutor Robert Ives to testify. So far in the trial, many of the claims Rick Allen's defense purported as truths have been exposed as lies. In the first Frank's motion, Rick Allen's defense claimed Sheriff Tony Liggett falsified statements in relation to prosecution, witness Sarah Carbaugh's description of the man she saw on County Road 300 North to help obtain a search warrant for Allen's home. Sarah Carbaugh claimed she did see a man muddy and bloody, and the defense claimed Tony Liggett lied, and that Sarah only saw a man who was just muddy. Sarah Carbaugh claimed she saw a man who was muddy and bloody in a video-recorded taped interview, which had been lost with the rest of the recorded interviews from February 17th to April 30th, 2017. A Redditor put a good list together highlighting some of the lies the defense purported as truths in their motion filings. One of the lies the defense put out is that law enforcement used the same type of gun as Rick Allen, a Sig Sauer P226, when law enforcement used 9mm Glocks and not Rick Allen's model gun. They pushed that lie to make it seem maybe one of the law enforcement officers on the scene may have dropped a bullet from their gun. The defense also lied about when the .40 caliber unspent cartridge was found, and it was found at the same time the girls were found on February 14, 2017. The defense claimed there was no chain of custody for the bullet, which was not true, and there was chain of custody for the bullet. It was revealed by Dr. Roland Kaur that the weapon used may not necessarily have had a serrated blade, and that he thought only one weapon was used, not two like the defense claimed, and he thought a box cutter could be the weapon. The deaths of Libby and Abby occurred approximately 40 to 41 hours before the autopsy. The autopsy was conducted on February 15, 2017 at 8 a.m. There was no F painted on the tree in Liberty German's blood. Phone evidence does not prove that Rick Allen left the trails at 2:15 p.m., and he did not take his 2017 phone to the trails, and the investigators did not find that phone, which had the same MEID number which he had given to Dan Doolin. The defense claimed there was no drag marks at the scene, when there actually was drag marks. They claimed branches were cut with a saw that were on Libby and Abby, which was not true, and there was no sign of cut marks on them by the crime scene analysts. Abigail Williams did not have a phone. There was no sticks which formed the shape of antlers at the top of Abigail Williams' head. The iPhone 6S phone was not turned on by a human at 4:33 a.m. on February 14, 2017, and the phone picked up a signal and a periodic ping occurred where 15 to 20 messages came in with a data spike from an earlier time on the 13th of February, 2017. The phone then turned off. A yellow rope was not used to hang one of the victims, and the rope was used by the police. Libby and Abby's clothing was wet, proving they did cross the creek. The hair in Abby's hand was originally tested through mitochondrial DNA testing, which showed the hair belonged to a female relative of Liberty German. The girls were not killed in a different location, and there was a lot of blood at the crime scene. There was no conclusive proof sexual assault did not occur, and sexual assault doesn't have to be from penetration. Allen was driving a 2016 Ford Focus and not a 2014 Ford Focus. The branches over Libby and Abby were large and not small sticks. Dan Doolin did not write down and record Richard Allen's name as Richard Allen Whiteman. I think Rick Allen's defense team has gone past ethical boundaries and never really had a proper strategy to begin with to help their client. Their client has made it very difficult for them to navigate to a position where they could have been more agile in dismantling the mistakes made by law enforcement in the investigation. When Allen started confessing, it then became increasingly difficult to create an argument that he was not involved in the crime. I think the Odinist angle wasn't fully thought out, and it was more of a rushed makeshift theory to try to claim more than one person had to be involved to commit the crime. I don't understand why they have followers who want to help them, and maybe it's because of how romanticized lawyers are in the movies where they try to come to the rescue of the innocent party. I have to bring up the incompetence of the investigation in the murders of Libby and Abby because it's good to be impartial and not to just gloss over the mistakes that law enforcement made over the period of 5.5 years up until they arrested Richard Allen. Dan Doolin spoke to Richard Allen on February 18, 2017 at the Save-A-Lot parking lot, and Allen did not want to speak to him at his home or at the police station. Dan Doolin had just got back from vacation. The bridge guy images were released on February 15, 2017, and Rick Allen self-reported and called in on February 16, 2017, to tell the police he had been at the bridge on February 13, 2017, on his wife's wishes. Doolin did not ask what Allen was wearing and just took Allen's phone, MEI'd number, and his details. Doolin just did his job and was not a police investigator. Doolin said that Allen told him he was at the Mononhai Bridge Trail on February 13, 2017, between 1:30 p.m. and 3:30 p.m. Allen told Doolin he parked in the Farm Bureau parking lot and that he saw 3 girls on the trails. He said he parked at the old DCS office and walked toward the Mononhai Bridge. Doolin described his encounter with Allen as brief, and he had talked to him for about 5 to 10 minutes. He did not videotape or take an audio recording of the conversation he had with Allen. Kathy Shank found the tip in September 2022, and it was labeled with the name Richard Allen Whiteman, and the file with the tip had the word "cleared" written on it. The question I have is, would there have been an arrest if Allen did not self-report that he was at the trail on February 13, 2017? I think they'd have had to put 2 and 2 together with the Harvestor footage and would have had to figure out who owned the vehicle. The problem is, they didn't do that, and they had acquired the video footage quite late on in the investigation in September 2022, according to reports with the help of the FBI, and the video footage was recorded 54 minutes ahead of the normal time. The Ron Logan footage was also recorded an hour or so ahead when he was at the transfer station. It isn't technically the police's fault that that happened, and they corroborated times with witnesses and other data. I just feel like they could have tried a bit harder. Former Delphi Police Chief Steve Mullen, not being careful enough to get the video recorder fixed for the interviews for 2 months from February 17th to April 30th, 2017, is unexcusable in my opinion. I guess they tried to get it solved to some extent, but it should have been taken care of faster. The problem would have been an easy fix if they got someone in who knew what they were doing with hardware to fix the issue. It would not have been difficult. The video recorded interviews of Sarah Carbaugh saying she saw a man muddy and bloody would have worked for the prosecution better if they had the video evidence. These mishaps can be harmful, and fortunately it didn't completely damage the case. It's not really law enforcement's fault, but the former Westville Correctional Facility lead psychologist Monica Walla made it more difficult for the prosecution because of her misconduct in looking for files in relation to another man who was brought up in the Delphi case named Keegan Klein. I just think it's just very unprofessional for her to do that, but I don't think it would have made a great deal of difference given the context and the source of the confessions and how they were revealed. Other issues have come up at trial, such as the possibility of a footprint not being known about by law enforcement and the defense. Another issue was that Jerry Holman did not record a certain portion of his interview with Allen. That might be nitpicking, but I feel like the investigators have had more of a lackadaisical approach throughout the investigation. I think just because they were incompetent doesn't mean they cannot be right and not make progress in the case. Incompetence doesn't equal corruption. I was a bit disappointed in one of the witnesses for the prosecution in the trial. Rayleigh Voorhees had spoken to Douglas Rice a few years ago on different occasions. She gave a very good description to Douglas Rice on who she saw, and in my opinion matched Richard Allen pretty well. She told Douglas Rice the man she saw had a short-billed hat with a hoodie pulled up and a scarf below his nose, and he was between 40 and 50 in age and was around her height, about 5'6" or 5'7", so pretty short. In the PCA, it did not have any witnesses describe those details. Douglas Rice also showed her a photo of registered sex offender Jimmy Duvall, and she said the person she saw looked like him. Richard Allen looks very similar to Jimmy Duvall. Rayleigh Voorhees said she saw the man between 2 p.m. and 2:15 p.m. to Hannah Shakespeare in the Lost Delphi documentary.
Like 2 or 2:15. Like 2 or 2:15. Like 2 or 2:15.
Eyewitnesses are notoriously unreliable. I can see how height and weight can be described wrong. I have perceived the person at a distance as being taller walking down a path, but up close they have been shorter in stature. So it's not out of the realms of possibility that she just forgot her original description and could not remember the person's body type and facial features accurately due to the period of time she had seen him in. I think Rick Allen not getting DNA in his car is plausible because he came from an environment which was wet and he had gone through the creek with Libby and Abby. He could have washed his jacket, taken off his top layered jacket, and may have only got a certain amount of blood on him on the top layer navy jacket, which he may have put in a bag or put inside the brown layer below before he got into his car. He also had 5.5 years to work out how and to clean his vehicle, and his clothing would have been washed over the years, which would again be reasonable for no DNA of the victims to be found in his home or car. No DNA was found in Brian Kohberger's car, and he was caught a month or so after the Idaho 4 murders. Brian used a K-bar knife which has a hilt, which would have helped prevent him from cutting himself. The Delphi murders trial of Richard Allen reminds me to some extent of the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial. The case against Alex Murdaugh was circumstantial from the beginning. No murder weapons were ever found. Other than dogs and chickens, there were no witnesses. There was no damning DNA evidence, and the investigation included several missteps. The only thing conclusively proven at trial was that Alex Murdaugh lied about being at the scene of the murders and continued to lie during his testimony. The kennel video, which his son Paul Murdaugh recorded not so long before he was murdered, proved Alex Murdaugh lied about his alibi because his voice was caught on his son Paul's video.
Tonight, Alex Murdaugh's alibi potentially destroyed by his son's own video.
Get it! Get that!
Prosecutors revealing a 58-second cell phone video recorded by Paul Murdaugh directly contradicting Alex Murdaugh's story, placing him at the murder scene minutes before his wife and son were shot to death. In the video, you can see Paul going into a pen on the family's property to check on a friend's dog. In the background, you hear other voices.
Hey, he's got a bird in his mouth.
Damn, Bubba.
It's a guinea.
This is a chicken.
Come here, Bubba.
Come here, Cash.
Come here, Bubba.
Cash. Quit.
Murdaugh claimed he didn't go to the family's kennels that night until he found his wife and son's bodies.
I was up at the house. I laid down, took a nap on the couch, probably, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes.
In emotional testimony, close family friend Rogan Gibson recalling how he talked to Paul Murdaugh that night about his injured dog. Paul telling him he'd take a video.
Did you hear any other voices when you were on the phone with Paul about 8:40?
I did.
And what voices did you hear?
I heard Miss Maggie,
And who else did you hear?
and I thought it was Mr. Alec that I heard.
Cell phone records show Paul took that video right after that call. Minutes later, he and his mother were dead.
Did you ever get that video?
I did not.
Police later showed Gibson that video from inside the kennel.
And what voices did you hear?
Paul's, Miss Maggie, and Mr. Alec.
And how sure are you now?
Positive.
100%?
That's correct.
Prosecutors playing that video for him again in court.
Can you point out Alex Murdaugh, the person whose voice you recognize in this video in this courtroom, please?
Sitting right there in a gray jacket.
The 2 strands or 1 strand of hair found in Abigail Williams' hand, which was confirmed to be a female relative of Liberty Germans through mitochondrial DNA testing, was eventually directly confirmed to match Kelsey German after they tested the root from the hair. That was the nuclear DNA, and the nuclear DNA matched Kelsey German. The hair being easily transferred makes sense that there is an innocuous reason as to why Abby had the hair in her hand, because she had been in Kelsey's car and was wearing Libby's hoodie when she was found. The timeline of Brad Weber getting home in his white Econoline van makes sense because Libby's phone stopped moving at 2:32 p.m., according to the Apple Health app data, and Brad got back home at about 2:30 p.m. from work. He worked at Subaru in Lafayette, which is about a 25 to 27-minute drive from there to the Monon High Bridge Trail. Will Richard Allen be convicted? I think he will, but who knows, eh? Maybe there will be a mistrial. I think many people don't understand what beyond a reasonable doubt means, And I think it isn't reasonable to think that Rick Allen isn't involved in the crime if you take into consideration the confessions and how high he is on the probability scale of being involved. I think Libby's Bridge Guy video and the Harvestor video is solid evidence, along with Rick Allen's own confessions, that I think will get him convicted of the 2 felony murder and the 2 murder charges. The forensic bullet evidence was good for the probable cause, but I don't think it plays a factor at this point. Who knows, maybe there is hope for Rick Allen, and a mistrial occurs for a round 2 second trial or an appeal down the line. The defense is presenting their case now the prosecution has rested. We'll see what they can do to negate and diminish what the prosecution has presented.